Buen video and salam alaikum. A little bit of a clue as to some of the players that we're interested in a little later this evening. Danny, did you pick up on those languages?
Possibly, yeah.
Good. I like to hear that. Cultured man is Dr. Danny, so makes good sense. Danny's message just before we went live actually was join us if you're still playing FPL. We were pretty tempted not to bother this week, to be honest with you. Oh, hello. I'm going to say this before anything else. This is a good message to start with.
Lovely.
You're absolutely damn right, dude Morpheus. Hello, you sexy freak. Yeah, why not? Hopefully that doesn't affect us in the filters. I don't know how that stuff works, but anyway. All things aside, all things being considered, are you doing well this evening, Danny?
I'm not too bad. I mean, we were always going to pod. I think people might believe what you were going to say there. I think we were always going to pod. I'm hoping. I mean, I feel a bit scrambled, to be honest. Scrambled for lots of reasons, and not FPL and work, and I don't know, loads of things going on. And I'm going away on Saturday, so I feel a bit scrambled. And like I said to you before, I don't even think I can verbalize anything that I'm thinking at the moment. So I'm hoping that just chatting to you and just sort of freestyle and chatting FPL will help and will bring things together in some way. Because I'm a bit all over the place. I'm calm, but I'm a little bit all over the place in terms of a few things FPL wise.
Yeah, I mean, what is FPL friends, if nothing other than a sort of therapy group for weirdos? Really, it is that kind of thing, isn't it? You have to remember that we're all a bit peculiar. And also, talking of peculiar, you would have noticed that, all and sundry that you've probably seen over the last week or two, all the people that you respect, all the good managers in the world that seem to suck, do really, really badly. So actually, it's a badge of honor if you're sort of 6, 7, 8 million in the world right now, which means conversely, you must be doing really well. You must be a really good manager, because everyone seems to be doing incredibly badly. Except for one or two people, I'll bring them up in the mini league in a minute, who are embarrassing us all, making us look really, really bad. So thank you very much to all of those people. Oh, apparently FPL Harry's still got a green arrow, so he's the exception to every rule. Is Harry, to be fair. So what can you do? So we're going to try and be a little bit more efficient this evening, because I know that you're all sort of probably downbeat. I'm particularly downbeat, Danny, as you know, because no matter how hard I try, and even though I'm probably the least West Ham fan ever culturally, because I read and stuff. Unfortunately for me, I have to watch what's going on with Potter. We can talk about that later, to be fair, but it has influenced my moves this week a bit as well, unfortunately or fortunately, and a few things to bring up on West Ham perhaps a little bit later. I want to kick off, if I can, just by first of all, talking through some of our themes here. Preview for Game Week 3. Palmer replacements is probably going to be high on our list of conversation if we indeed need to replace him. I mean, he's still in both of our teams at the moment, I think, from memory, the last time I looked. So there's that. I suppose a little bit of a talk about early wildcard. That's a good call, actually. And we haven't specifically got things for free hit 3, but we will talk about that later on as part of our conversation as well. But I have to talk about this first of all. I'm trying not to be distracted by the chat there and the suggestions in it. But yeah, I got a message. I will read it pretty much verbatim. About 10 minutes before we sat down to begin this. I got a lovely message in WhatsApp. Now, this is from my mother-in-law. So, evening, Maureen, if you're watching this as well. Anyway, hope you are grateful that I didn't join the Last Resort League. Father-in-law, top 10, week 1. Mother-in-law, top 10, week 2. Haha. Would have been good for your podcast. No, I don't know what to say. Nothing's right. It's all gone wrong. The world's turned upside down. This is not right, is it? What was supposed to do, Daddy?
Wait and be patient and hope that one of us turns it around. Yeah, I mean, I've not looked at any mini leagues, obviously, and I never really do. And to be honest, I never really look at mini leagues for the whole season, because because I just kind of assume I'm either doing well or I'm not. And if I'm doing well, I assume that I'm probably doing pretty well in the mini leagues. But yeah, especially now. So like, I've got no idea how many points I've got, but I know it's crap. I know it's not a lot, and I've got really no idea. Although I did look at like who the world. I do tend to sometimes just look at the world number one, because I always want to know how far away from world number one. I just think that's a pretty reasonable kind of measure, and just to try and keep it close. And I remember like last season,
ambitious. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, always. I mean, that's the aim, is how close are you to world number one, and how did they keep getting away from you? And last season, obviously, I had a pretty good season. I think I was sort of like, it was about 150, something like between 100 and 150 points away from like world number one for a while, which is pretty good generally. Well, very good, I suppose, generally, because that was when I was like top 10k or whatever. So that's what I tend to keep an eye on. And then I did just glance at that probably a few days ago, and I'm like, I think it was 106 points behind after 2 game weeks. That's quite special, really. But yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Because this is the sort of the joy and the sort of despair of the template and of the engaged managers and the content creators, and we've all got pretty similar teams, so we're all doing pretty terribly. So it's like, it's kind of nice, because you don't feel too bad that you're not behind the people you kind of feel like you're playing against, or that you might be competing with longer term. But then also just shows you like what an opportunity it always is to I don't know, get ahead and be a bit different. But yeah.
Well, speaking of getting ahead and being different, you regular viewers will no doubt notice who's number 2 on our list. I actually had to badger him into joining this league, which I'm now regretting. But our good friend Stu, or Pep Talk to those who are familiar to those circles, number 2
Nice.
2 in the world in Last Resort Mini League. So well done, Stu. I hope it doesn't last. No, well, not really. I mean, I hope you continue to do well, within sort of reason, that sort of thing. But
who's number 1? Because we should, I'm sure you're going to say it anyway, but I feel like when we do this, I remember when I used to like first started playing, just to like, so that we remember to do this every week. But I remember like a few years ago when I started to take the game or play the game more seriously. You're talking 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever I first started playing the game, I'd join mini leagues. I remember like in my really good seasons, I'd look for those pods where I knew I was like in the top 3, top 5, and they were like, I don't know whether it was, I can't remember what pods, but pretty big pods, in a good season. And you'd love to hear your name read out when you first started playing. So just to say, we've got to shout out whoever's number 1.
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I've made it so small again. I'll probably have to just focus on the top 5 as usual. But it looks something along the lines of, is it Paulie Urson?
I will check very quickly. I'll have to probably scroll quite far
Who,
down.
to be fair, has already got a 17-point lead over Stu. So that's pretty amazing. He must have. Well, I say he must have played a chip, but it's possible he doesn't. But
yeah, Paulie Urson. And he's just played free hit in game week 2.
Okay.
So yeah, and he played bench boost in game week 1.
Cheeky. I mean, to be fair, there clearly were worse weeks to play free hit, because I mean, I don't know what I scored. I'm guessing me and you probably got about 30-something points or each. I know you got 42, I think, didn't you? Something like that. So yeah, it's not great, is it?
No,
the other thing to note here, by the way, I won't talk about some of our other regular guests who are languishing at the bottom, but I just a note. I know John Edgar is a regular viewer, and he's on that list there. He was number 1 last week, I think. Johnny Eggs. You've probably seen that name before.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there is another Edgar on the list. So what's the story there, Sarah Edgar?
Oh,
what is that? Are we talking? Is that a romantic relationship in the top 10? That's quite something. I'll have to get or a sister. So yeah, be interested to know about that. So please do let us know. I'm interested to see a bit of a grudge match there. So yeah, we're quite excited there. And for any of you who haven't joined, code's on the screen. I'll read it out for audio because I'm trying to become a bit more professional. But LZK I6K, so LZK I6K, and if you're still joining, and you can join for certainly the next couple of months. So don't worry about joining late. So actually, I suppose this is to my mother-in-law. Yes, you are allowed to join if you haven't joined already. It would be lovely to have you. So yeah, please do.
They definitely
Please
are.
do join.
They definitely are related in some way, by the way, because they both wildcarded this week into very
Have they?
suspiciously similar teams with the likes of Tielemans, Semenyo, Watkins, Mateta, Bruno, Munoz. Yeah, got my eye on them too.
It's probably worth reminding viewers that last year we mentioned a Gumar team. I think it was a Gumar team, wasn't it, when we met Alan for the first time? Well, in this pod anyway. So perhaps Johnny's got a Gumar team going on there, and actually it could be a ringer. It's his sort of saucy team for his kinks, that sort of thing. And also just quick shout out because I have noticed, Heather, that you're in there as well. Pleased to have you in there as well, and everyone else besides. So
as long as
was she captain Jokeres? Jesus!
Oh, for God's sake! I was going to say as long as both John and Sarah are subscribed to the pod, then it's all good, isn't it?
All right. Well, I guess we should talk shop. I don't know whether you want to reveal anything that you've done, or maybe we should save it for a bit later, and you can just talk about some of these things here. But I mean, essentially, we should give a bit of an update on the big midfield conundrums. I'm going to sort of skip between two slides here because we've got a few. Actually, maybe I should start here, possibly, because of course these are some of the worries in people's teams at the moment. We structured both of our teams in such a way where we've got as many escape routes as humanly possible. That's certainly how I'm always keen to do. It's not just because of that, but it's a pretty sensible way to go usually. And a lot of people had Palmer from the start, second biggest owned player in the game, wasn't he? Sort of 54, 55%, something like that. João Pedro in and around the same kind of amount at the start. And then you got Florian Wirtz and Saka also premium or premium light options, that sort of thing. So I suppose we should start with the latest kind of on these players, really. I mean, the update that we had last, I know that I haven't got it on the screen, but update was that with Palmer, it was an interesting one because the day before, I think Monday, Tuesday, certainly Monday, it was doing the rounds that it was possibly a little bit worse than just a little niggle, and we were looking at more of a 4 to 6 week kind of time frame. Obviously, he didn't play the West Ham game. Clearly, didn't need him. We'll come back to that in a minute. But now, I mean, no clarity on this. I don't know whether we're likely to find out, but of course, there is a chance perhaps that we need to hang on just a little bit later and see whether he's going to turn up for game week 3 or indeed game week 4. And then a lot of people bailing on Wirtz, subbed in both games, not hitting great numbers, anything like that, still adapting. And then, of course, Saka picking up an injury that's going to keep him out for... How long was he out, Danny? Was it... He's more of a 6 week type of window from memory.
I think so, yeah. I think I heard 4 to 6 or something, 4 or 5. So it's enough to just transfer him out if you've got him.
So where do you want to start on these big midfield conundrums?
Oh God, I don't know. I guess Palmer really.
Yeah, we'll go price down maybe. Yeah.
I mean, they share similarities, Palmer and Wirtz, I suppose, in that we kind of know/think that they're good picks, and know/think that they will be in the future, but both kind of haven't really done it yet for different reasons. And that's important, because it's fine, particularly in the case of Wirtz, to believe that they're going to be good. And I do. So I'll talk about that in more detail, but it's weighing that against, okay, well, what can I get instead? Are there more sure bets? And how good are they going to be in the future? How much do you want to bet on the future? In, for example, Wirtz's case, who's not got a good game this week on paper, and then he's got 2 very good games on paper, which, and Palmer is really interesting because he hasn't done it yet. He's just been injured in his good fixture. And I've just looked now, he's been sold by nearly 1.2 million already. you'd think that's going to go up a lot more, probably approaching 2 million or more. I don't know, because most people make the transfers when it comes to the weekend, which then makes it really interesting because he's then much more of a differential when in game week 4, when I suspect he will come back, because I think we've all said the same thing. I'm not going to say anything new. It looks like an injury that's a little bit precautionary. It's a bit of a groin issue. It's obviously been niggling at him for a while. Or he mentioned, Maresca mentioned that he'd felt it the previous game and so on and so on. So it looks like the perfect opportunity to not send him on an international duty and give him some rest. And then having not played on Friday, you're talking 4 weeks there on the sidelines, which you would think, if it was a precautionary injury, is a nice rest. And he should be kind of raring to go. I just want to say as well on Palmer, it's not often that because this will sound like hindsight, and so I'm very aware of that, and therefore it isn't. And of course, there's some emotion at play and all that stuff. So it's very rare that I'll say this for that reason, because I always talk about process and there's being really happy and satisfied going in. But going into last week, I said it a few days before that this is the hardest captaincy decision I might have all season, and I hope that it's the hardest that I have all season, because it's horrible. I can't stand it. And I think I made a mistake. And again, this is not hindsight. This is just my belief. Remember that your process is very subjective. I had a bad week and a kind of bad Friday night because I didn't own João Pedro. That was really the main thing. That was one of the biggest differentiators. But I actually, on Friday night, and whereas normally that would have annoyed me quite a lot, that 60% of the game on João Pedro and got 15 points, I was still kind of felt a bit lucky. I still kind of felt a bit, Jesus Christ, because I felt I'd made, and I messaged you, and it wasn't just necessarily emotions. Like I really wasn't I straight away as soon as deadline passed. The deadline, and Late Riser said to me as well, he's never seen me as this as kind of indecisive, because I think we kind of heard maybe like a minute before or something, there was rumours that Gusto was playing, or that Pedro and Delac were both playing, or something like that. Like literally a minute before or something. It was far too late to kind of do anything. There were some rumours, and I was panicking. And my finger, because then the game didn't update. I don't know if everyone saw that, but the game didn't update at 6:30. It didn't.
No,
update. It didn't update. No, it didn't update until 6:32 or 6:33. Oh. And I was already like literally hovering, going, "Oh my God!" And I hate making last-minute changes because it's just that natural loss aversion that it's that cognitive bias that we're all just like, "Well, I've had it here. If I change it, I'm going to hate myself if it doesn't work." And it's so hard to remove that, and you're not able to think rationally and calmly. And it was actually only really when it passed that you do think a little bit more rationally and calmly. And I was suddenly like, "Hang on a minute! Like, West Ham are so bad. Like, what am I even thinking here?" Because this, a bit like last season when. And I was one of the few on Palmer when he played Brighton and he scored 4. And we hadn't seen anything from him until that point either. But it felt like that game that could open up for him a little bit. I mean, the reason I didn't go there and I was on Salah and was because I did not think he was going to go back to that kind of formation and playing Gusto on the right, which does seem to help Palmer a lot, and so on and so on. So anyway, yeah, I was like, no, I've actually genuinely have made a full-on massive mistake here. And I said to you, didn't I? I said, no, I do actually think this is going to be a hammering, an absolute hammering for West Ham. And I can't believe that I've done this. And I was like, I was distraught because I was like, it's just there. And it's so not me, especially Cole Palmer, who I just was talking about a week before as being, I think he was going to be the highest scoring player of the season. And I've seen kind of people come up with, obviously, just to what with me, just obviously complete and utter nonsense. Like, oh, Chelsea played this well because Palmer wasn't playing. I mean, that's utter nonsense and drivel. And I think he would have just mega hauled if he'd have played in that game. So a bit of a rant there on Palmer, but I need to say that because that's the thing about the process. And because I wasn't set, which you really have to be, which is a mistake. That's the mistake. It's not so much that I didn't captain Palmer, it's that I wasn't set enough. So then I was immediate massive regret after the deadline. And I just feel like massively dodged a bullet there. So again, it's another reason why, although I'm doing crap after only 2 weeks, like most of us are, I'm not really bothered, and I could be doing a lot worse. Because also, I don't own, for example, the Chelsea defence, and that they shouldn't have conceded really.
No, because we'll talk sort of separately about West Ham, because I think it is a separate conversation. It does affect a few people's transfers. I think there are a few things to talk about that have changed there that people might not have seen as a result of not just Friday, but also the midweek cup game against Wolves as well, which I do think is more important than usual, because when the team is doing that badly, they're trying to play their strongest team and continue and look like they're going to build out of something, and that's clearly not happening either. But just a slight side note, I did think, because actually Danny and I mean, I can confirm that Danny was definitely distraught around deadline time. There's no doubt about that. But Esteval did play really well, and actually I think it posed a really different kind of problem for the West Ham defence, to be honest with you, that they were also not ready to cope with. So not saying for a second that he would have done better than Palmer or anything like that, but they can't handle pace across the team at all. I mean, if you think about West Ham's real lack of pace, it's one of the massive issues across that team more generally. So that was definitely there for all to see as well. I know what you mean. I felt relatively lucky about that, and people will take their sort of 5 points from Porro. I mean, again, that was another one that was a bit annoying, because I'm thinking we were both starting him anyway, and people got that kind of result, that sort of thing as well. I mean, a few people, the goal that Chelsea conceded, by the way, we'll talk about Paquetá, because I do think there are some changes that are going on there as well, and I'd like to kind of raise that a bit later on. So you're, I mean, of course, we can't speculate, but you're in a position where you're still holding him at this point in time. Are you likely to move on if the news is bad? Sorry, the sun is in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't expect us to get news in terms of is he starting or not. And by the way, I'm going to Spain on Saturday morning.
Oh yeah, you did say.
Malaga. Yeah, I'm going to Malaga Saturday to Thursday for a nice little trip, and damn, it couldn't be any worse timed, because my flight is due to land at 11:10 a.m. English time, which is...
Oh, you're landing? Oh no, I thought you were taking off.
No, landing. Taking off would have been fine. It's much worse. So I am... I mean, sometimes these things are a blessing, aren't they? I mean, I suppose, but not really. I don't really have a bench, so it could screw me over big time. But yeah, so I will be making a decision. I won't be waiting for any hope of leaks or anything like that. And I don't expect us to get concrete news on Palmer. I might be wrong. Such that if Palmer's dropping in price tonight, I'll sell him tonight, because the kind of balance between what I expect to get in terms of news and losing team value is not enough. It
sounds like he won't, for what it's worth.
Oh, good.
Yep.
That would be good, because I could do with one more day. I mean, we'll talk about possible replacements, but people like teams like Palace are obviously playing tomorrow, so it would be nice if we felt like he wasn't going to drop. I do worry slightly about price change websites at the start of the season, because
they're not good, are they?
We're going to get random ones thrown out, and you have to be pretty accurate with Palmer for someone who's got 1.2 million sales. And last time I heard, Ragaboli Live FPL is working off like roughish estimations of like 10% worth of ownership sales, and I'm like, so I don't know how accurate it can really be, but yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I mean, and a quick, morning moment for FPL price changes. We miss you. We need your wiles.
Statistics. Sorry. You mean FPL statistics?
Yes, that is exactly what I meant. Thank you very much for clarifying. FPL statistics. Erase, change, edit. In the studio they can sort that out, of course. But yeah, thank you, because that is quite different, isn't it? Actually, from memory. Yeah, there's a very different person.
What a legend! What a legend! Yeah, shout out to FPL statistics. I mean, no one ever saw his face, and he was making that site for... I mean, I can't remember FPL without FPL statistics. Like I say, I started playing the game in the 17-18 season. I'm pretty sure it was there then. I can't remember it not being there. So that was where I would look every night, especially at the start of the season, FPL statistics, and you'd see the little percentages that that all the other sites use that same percentage. So presumably he came up with a model in terms of what it looks like as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a
Yeah,
guy! He was always such a like a rational and calm individual online, and just he always offered explanations anytime somebody, and he always had an explanation, which was great. You know, if there was some kind of mad change or anomaly. So
I suspect. I mean, just on this because I think it is something that people do like to talk about. I mean, we don't need to go into the kind of theory behind it. You will know this about me by now. I absolutely hate midweek price changes and all the things that go with it. I think it's something that's for someone like me anyway. I would rather have just a few days headspace, and I like that kind of time. And I think it's unfortunate that it forces people into these decisions. But I can also see the game theory about why it's a good thing and all the rest of it, and makes people press the buttons early and that sort of thing. I'm in a situation because I very quickly lost money on Fullkrug. What's awkward about this is it doesn't matter anymore in a way. It matters more to you because you didn't lose any money on anyone, if that makes sense. You know, whereas 5.9 Fullkrug means that I'm already effectively that 500,000 down. So dropping a penny on Wirtz doesn't make much difference, unfortunately. Stuff like that. I know it does, but you know, in the immediate sense, it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. So it's quite a frustrating one. For what it's worth, just to add my kind of tuppence in, it's quite likely that I'm going to have to hold out pretty much towards the end on this one because my situation is such where I need to take the money out of Wirtz or Palmer, and I can't sell both because that would incur a hit because Fullkrug, and I'll explain this a bit later on. I'm very, very sure that he's definitely someone who he is a start risk now. I know some people earlier this week would have said, "Oh, no, yeah, I know," but he came off after that's game state. You know, he's likely to start the next one, etc. I don't think so. Unfortunately, I think it looks from what I saw last night with Wolves. And I said this actually, the most likely person to replace him was Paquetá being pushed up. And he scored a striker's goal in that game and actually played one of his best games that I've seen from him in a couple of years. So I know they lost, they still suck. The defense looks awful, but he himself as an individual, Paquetá had a pretty good game. So strangely enough, some people might go there and pick him at some point. I think that time is not quite now, but it's an interesting shout. We talked more about Palmer there. Wirtz, I mean, out of the two there, if you're in a situation, perhaps like a manager like mine, because other people are going to have a situation as well, and you're almost picking who to sell first and who to keep. Do you have a particular view on who's the one that you would like to keep?
well, I think I mean, I'll talk about my moves in a minute. I might have made. Well, I'll have made moves that, or a move that most people will not like and say is, you know, mistake. Which objectively, it's probably is not great in some ways. So it kind of goes against what I'm going to say now. I mean, I don't think Palmer's going to play this weekend. So I think you know, in most cases, you sell Palmer. However, obviously Palmer is a miles better FPL pick. As I say, he comes back with Brentford away, which is a nice fixture for Chelsea, I think, in game week 4, and he'll be a bit of a differential. It's difficult with Wirtz, isn't it? Because the prices do come into it again for me, and that's part of the reason that I made certain moves. And like I've sold Wirtz, for example, already, which is fine. Again, he's a perfectly fine hold because he's got great fixtures in game weeks 4 and 5. There's so many things at play there, isn't there? Because there's like loss aversion with him as well. Like I think it's so hard for people to let go of a player when they have got good fixtures coming up, which is fine and makes sense. But it's kind of doubly hard when it shouldn't be, because you think, oh my God, well, imagine if he actually scores when I had him all this first time and then he doesn't then. And obviously that shouldn't be part of the process or the decision making, but it inevitably is. You know, there are lots of other very good picks. You know, if you manage to strip that away, which is very difficult, if not impossible. You know, if you look at whatever picks people have been talking about, Semenyo, Sarr, and Cunha, and Bruno, or whoever else, they're all just good picks. With you know, in their own right. But as you say, it's kind of the prices is. I think the price changes are more relevant at the start of the season than any other, and that's not just because the price changes are more volatile and they kind of go up and down more. It's actually because, like you said, if for a lot of people, I mean, I'm very open to an early wildcard and may well do what is particularly early wildcard for me. I might do. I'm very open to it. It's just a very strong possibility. It's more relevant because, as you say, there's less maneuverability at the moment because most players are at that 0.5 increment, and so losing 0.1 is losing a whole potential player or losing potentially 0.5 on a wildcard draft. If you're doing a wildcard in 4 or 5 or 6, if you've managed to avoid a few price drops and keep a few, it sort of provides more value than it does, in game week 20 when really value never really matters at all. I mean, it's much rarer that it does than it doesn't. You see it every season. So it is difficult with Wirtz because we've seen him struggle a bit in these first few games, but it's a bit like some of the United players. Again, the similarities there. Like, of course, he struggled because they've just played Bournemouth and Newcastle. I think we all not forgot about Bournemouth, but weren't sure if Bournemouth, for example, were going to come back as what they were last season, or just be. And they just reminded us straight away, oh my God, these guys are an unbelievable team. In that game at Anfield, it was like, oh my God, and the pressing is unbelievable. And we said it last week, as a guy new to the Premier League, the two of the worst teams you want to come up against is Bournemouth and Newcastle in terms of getting used to the pace and the press that's on you. It's a complete nightmare. And you could see it against Bournemouth. And then, of course, as we said last week, Newcastle, and why I was saying, do I want to bet against Eddie Howe for the captaincy, for example? Same discussion was Newcastle are a living nightmare when they've got all the players fit, who, by the way, a lot of those players might be, injured now in terms of Joe Linton, Bruno G and Tonali in the midfield. So similar with Wirtz and your Brunos and your Cunhas, what can we really take from the fixtures that they've had anyway so far? At the same time, of Wirtz, he's got Arsenal next, which is the worst game of the season. It's this, it's the second worst game of the season because they're at home. He's never going to be a bad pick even in those fixtures because he's the number 10 who I still expect to start. He's Liverpool's number 10 in the best attack in the league. So it's still okay. If he blanks again, it's before an international break. Does that lead to more drops in price? It's a bit of a problem. You don't want to be bleeding money. Again, I'm not massively bothered about price changes. If someone's dropped and they drop another 1 or 2 times, it is what it is. There's not much difference between one drop and 2 and 3, as we said, in terms of this stage of the season. So I'm too long an answer, but it's hard to really say. I mean, Wirtz is still a good pick, but it is difficult at the moment. I mean, the other thing that kind of feeds into this conversation, which I'll talk about with my team, is I think we have more resources now than ever before to be a little bit aggressive in our approach to the game anyway, and not necessarily sit and be patient and have to sit through these difficult fixtures for players. We got on Wirtz at the start of the season just in case he did go big against Bournemouth, and then you'd struggle to chase that 8.5 ever again, and you'd expect his price to rocket because of what he could have been, and then being able to come off him rather than come on him. That was the point of having him. It wasn't necessarily I want him because I'm definitely going to have him in game week 4 and 5 when he's got good fixtures. It was because he could go off and he could go up in price, and that hasn't happened. But we've got so many resources now. When you combine the 6 chips, having a free hit, even having a free hit, an extra free hit, to be able to dodge a whole game week that's shit for you on paper, as well as another not another wild card. We've got 2 wild cards anyway, but we've got the free hit, a wild card, and the 5 free transfers that you're able to save up potentially. There's so much there to be able to maneuver your team around and swap things around and be a bit aggressive or play an early wild card or get someone back in and blah, blah, blah. That does change it slightly. Do you know what I mean? That compared to previous seasons where it might be a little bit more logical to just sit on someone like Wirtz through the bad fixtures and wait for the good ones, for example. So yeah, that's where I am with that. If that makes any sense at all?
It does. I think actually it just plays into a little bit of a strategic thought about this kind of period of a season, particularly this season, as you say, where we got more tools in theory to be aggressive or to decide on your particular course of action. Is that I'm reminded that what the sort of last 10 to 15 weeks of the season are always like, which is pretty monotonous, to be honest with you. Often, okay, we're all going to bench boost game week 33, wildcard 34. It goes in that kind of direction. Oh, who's going to double? Let's get 2 of those, 3 of those, and that sort of thing. And it's pretty dull, to be honest with you. Depending on your situation, it'll probably decide on how aggressive you're going to be there, or whether you're just going to defend and that sort of thing. So this is a tricky window, I always think, because you could easily, as you say, maybe you've taken the time over the summer to think, oh, do you know what? This year I'm going to roll transfers. This year I'm going to be more patient. That sort of thing. But of course, the season could pass you by. This is the time where you can, in a sense, you probably have the most leeway to be a bit different and to be a bit more, this is what I'm going to do. And because nothing's settled, no one knows what DEFCON is going to mean yet. No one knows whether you can get away with no premiums. No one really knows yet. And that is often the case at the beginning of a season anyway. But it's more particularly the case this season because we've already seen Salah, he's doing okay, but doesn't look like he's going to, belt in a hat-trick anytime soon. Haaland already had a game where, I can see a few people in the chat are obviously pretty upset with him, being up against a good sort of robust Tottenham team at the moment. So there's a lot of ways in which, this could be the time where you're missing out by not going a bit different. And managers like Stu, who I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, our friend who had the gumption to go for Gyökeres captain game week 2, and Heather and a few others in the chat have been like that as well. They're the ones who are laughing at us, for our steady, robust structures where we can reach anything all very well. But, they're the ones at the top of the mini leagues, etc. So it is a funny time. There isn't strictly a right answer, because I even looked at my team this week and thought to myself, do you know what? This is before the Wolves game last night. If Fullkrug does start, I could roll again. There is a bit of me that immediately thought, well, if Palmer was all right and so on and so forth, there is a legitimate argument for that. There's also a legitimate argument for taking a hit and sorting it all out and moving on. There's so many different ways to play at this point in time.
And you kind of there's obviously always a balance between, as we've said, being patient, which is fine. I hate that word, but kind of rolling transfers to gain strength, which is always true. Really, it's always true to an extent. But at this time of the season, especially, you always feel quite close to a wild card. I think everyone does, and naturally, and you probably should. And I think everyone's sort of jostling to try and identify what that wild card would be and what the next template is going to be and what players you want to keep in your team and so on. And so the notion, or like the argument to also play what's in front of you, becomes more powerful week by week in a sense at this stage prior to wildcard. It's all well and good thinking about what, again, that's what I meant about kind of Wirtz. Yeah, I do expect him to be good, but you're still making a bet there, that we don't really know what that's going to look like. And even in terms of minutes, if he has a really bad performance and, or not that he's been bad, but you know what I mean? Like even if they sign another player or whatever in minutes, and you're still making a big bet there versus playing what's in front of you. Every week, for example, if you want to sell Wirtz or Palmer, I feel like you're buying another week, aren't you, of information that sort of postpones a wild card, and you're also playing what's directly in front of you. That's the big thing at the moment in terms of there being lots of good picks. Is that's with Wirtz, for example, that's the best example. Is there someone that you think this week really stands out over Wirtz, because that's pretty good. A whole week in game week 3, a whole week is a whole another week of information. Also, a whole week, it's a whole international break next. You game week 4, you've got these free hits. You've got maybe more transfers. You've got a wild card. Every week counts for quite a lot. If you see what I mean. So there's just this kind of there's always conflict, isn't there, between playing what's in front of you, playing what's directly in front of you.
Yeah, true.
And buying time for a wild card, if you see what I mean. So, for example, holding on to Wirtz and that type of player is you're almost saying to yourself, which is again is absolutely fine. It might be the best players. I want to buy time until at least week 6, week 7, week 8 to wildcard, because that would make more sense. If you're holding someone like Wirtz through the really good fixtures and so on. Whereas if you're more open to, say, a wild card in game week 4, you're obviously much more open to selling Wirtz and much more open to playing what's directly in front of you, kind of thing. So,
yeah, true.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I think it's. I mean, actually, the chat is having their own kind of view on this themselves. I mean, I've seen some people, even the same person, has changed their mind mid comment from the sounds of it. But there is a lot of debate about Wirtz in particular and whether he needs to go, etc. But it does seem like a common sell this week. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm still a little frustrated about that one because I know we all go through this process, but I do feel like Wirtz was someone who, I don't know, I talked myself around to it pretty late, and now it just feels a little bit more pinchy that happened now. But no point, it's no one else's fault and that sort of thing. I think we all have one player in our squads who's a bit like that. But
Did you see that?
you wouldn't. Sorry.
Someone, I was going to say, like, because somebody tweeted me, I don't know if you saw it, because I'd actually totally forgotten about it. But, talking about Wirtz, somebody sent me my tweet from when the prices were revealed. And I said something like, "Oh, Wirtz, that's a nice price for the casuals," because my first reaction was obviously I'm not interested in getting Wirtz straight off the bat. Like, we've not sort of seen him in the league and everyone else will get him. So it's quite funny, really, because that, made me look a bit silly, didn't it? The turnaround that had happened between price changes and actually starting the season with him myself. But yeah, that's not for me. That's not me saying it was a mistake starting with him, because again, that's just kind of outcome based. He's still been pretty close to returning, in the first couple of games. It's what it is.
We should probably talk about some of the people that, I mean, because there is a lot of, I know I've heard a lot of people this week saying, "Oh yeah, I hate all of my midfield, but I don't know who to bring in." And that's something we can just talk about now. I actually want to start, oddly enough, with someone who you can't bring in. Because I think it was fascinating. I know a lot of people were able probably to watch the Newcastle Liverpool game earlier in the week, and you watched that one, and we were talking a little bit around that game as well. But so for those that don't know, not that it matters anymore, but Danny and I are in FPL Greyheads, Strictly Come FPL or whatever it is, that the tournament where you have to pick 2 punts per week, and you can only pick them once and then you can't pick them ever again. So it's quite an interesting game. You have to pick someone who you think, oh, I'll cash in on them now. So for example, game week 1 we picked Gakpo because he's could easily become a sort of flight risk later on, or someone who won't turn up and that sort of thing. So one of the players we picked anyway was Anthony Gordon, who looked generational during the game, looked incredible. We thought, well, he's a on penalties up front, Newcastle give everyone a game at home, that type of thing. And of course, lo and behold, he gets sent off and we get knocked out of the tournament. So thanks, Gordon. But it's fair to say, isn't it? He would have been number 1 on your list of replacements for either of your big midfield issues.
It would have been right up there. Yeah, it would have been right up there. I mean, obviously, as the week goes on, Strand Larsen or Newcastle sign a striker or something, it changes it a little bit, doesn't it? But in that striker position, I mean, he was the best player on the pitch, I think, when he came off. Newcastle were dominating the game, and he looked brilliant in that striker role. So it would have been, at that point, I was kind of hoping, okay, I hope he blanks here, and because not that many will go to him, and it seems like a really interesting pick. He's just one of these. I mean, the 3 people on the screen and the type of the players that are now becoming appealing to me, and the players that are probably the same players that are becoming appealing to everyone, is, what I've always liked in FPL is within different teams, we're seeing kind of more talismanic players start to emerge.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit of a banker taking that approach for me in FPL, and that's what I've always liked. And it counts for so much in my kind of head, thinking on a kind of meta strategy level, and again, just kind of more holistically. It's just a general thing for me, and my approach to the game is it counts for so much versus someone, for example, like a Wirtz, again, who is a bit more expensive and could be a great pick. I'm sure will be a great pick at different times and blah, blah, blah. But he's not, he certainly isn't someone, and I wouldn't imagine he becomes someone who is talismanic yet, not for a while. He might, you know what I mean? But he's not that kind of talismanic player. Whereas there are players like, especially Semenyo, that we see there, and if what Gordon was looking like previously, to an extent, Cunha, and we'll come back to Man United. Players like Sarr, who else? I can't think now. I'm sure we'll come on to them, but these are guys who just they're starting to emerge within their clubs as just being where you're seeing like a main man there, and it's just that's what you want, because you've got the minutes guaranteed. Everything seems to go through certain players, and they're just gold dust in FPL, and often cheap and offer value. So stop being distracted by the comments. What are you catching up on there?
No, I'm just getting the questions ready for a bit later on. But no, I do agree with you, because Wirtz is in a situation, isn't he, where I can see a scenario where he might have become talismanic, but it doesn't appear like within this structure and within this situation that's going to happen anytime immediately. Yeah.
But again, when we talk about talismanic, it's also like a character thing to an extent, and the type of player that you are. And yes, he could get lots of points and have some share of like assists and returns, but he is that sort of player who likes to create stuff, and he doesn't measure himself by goals and assists. That's not how he strikes me anyway. As necessarily what needs to be the difference maker in terms of getting the goals. There's going to be a lot of times where he assists the assister, probably lots of times, because he's looking for that pass that cuts through, and then it gets cut back from there. Blah blah blah. It's a character thing. Whereas when you look at Semenyo at the moment, for example, in Bournemouth, when you're watching Bournemouth, all you can see is Semenyo. That's all you can see. I know he's a big guy anyway, but he's just like he's just at the front end of the pitch, just knocking people over. He constantly seems to be at the end of everything. He's constantly shooting. He's constantly in the box at the right times, and you just think this is the guy who's just sort of, maybe he's just the same as always. Maybe he's taken a bit of a step up because Bournemouth have Kluivert's not there and Dango's not there, and maybe it's just a natural progression in his career. But that's what you want in fantasy football, is when you've got a team that you don't necessarily want all your players from Liverpool or all your players from from United this weekend necessarily. I mean, that doesn't factor into your kind of thinking, but generally over the season, because you're making big bets on teams where you've got these teams like Palace, Bournemouth, etc. You get to pick one talisman from a whole team where if that team does anything on that day, he's probably going to be involved in it. And that's what I'm seeing from someone like Semenyo at the moment. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because he and of course Kluivert has come on for that game as well, so that's quite an interesting new piece of information. I don't know what they did midweek in that regard, but he's someone that's only going to help strengthen. Then they brought in a couple of good other attackers as well, and actually that's true of Palace. I know they haven't done it yet, but they are. I was actually watching, how you do when you see someone linked to a player you've never heard of. I started to watch some videos of this guy. Oh, someone in the chat can remind me, but the guy that Palace are quite advanced talks to sign from Villarreal, and he's very highly regarded, but he's also extremely creative and not necessarily a player that looks like he's going to take a great deal of shots. And immediately this makes me think, oh, okay. that's quite a useful piece of information. Just watching that, of course, things can change, but he looked a little bit like what we are seeing from Wirtz at the moment in some ways. Someone who doesn't look like they're necessarily going to be banging in goals, but someone who's going to be really kind of pulling the strings behind, doing it a high line, usually on the left, but can play on the right, so that allows other Palace forwards to maybe be maneuverable. So Jeremy Pino, thank you very much, Marv. That's very kind of you. I've booked your question for a bit later on, and that's very kind of you for remembering. And also a correct answer from I am 90.
I was going to say, it'd be funny if he just randomly made up some completely.
It could. Do you know what? It easily could be, and I wouldn't know.
Keith, Barry, and we're just like, yeah, get him. But yeah,
you know what? Actually,
that is interesting.
Very quickly, this is a good opportunity because our chat is so fabulous at finding out all this information. Now, before we went on, someone had just signed up to be our 498th subscriber. Now, those amongst you, imagine the joy that it would bring you to be the 500th person to bring us that smile on Danny's face. Look at him there, little cute smile. You could make that happen by being number 500. So if you're in here thinking, well, I'm not sure about these guys on a permanent basis, but I'm just sort of chipping in. Danny, go on.
It looks like we've just reached 500.
Yes. I get to get the sort of cricket bat emojis out that I usually do. You know, raising the bat, the sort of Brian Lara type thing.
That's cool, isn't it? Nice
Yeah.
round number.
Dude, Morpheus, he was 499. Where have you been, by the way? I thought you'd be number one.
Exactly. Outrageous.
There you go. But yeah, no, that's good. And thank you very much for whoever it is who just chipped in there at the last minute. That's very kind. On to 1,000. That's the next target. I mean, ambitious, but there's nothing wrong with that. Where was I? We were talking about Palace, weren't we? So yes. Yeah. But yeah, I do think I'm in a situation. We'll talk about it when we do our teams later on. I don't actually think it makes any difference who I'm selling as to who I'm buying. So I'm in one of those weird situations where I'm very likely to buy the same player, whatever I do. That probably gives a bit of a clue. It's just because
I know now.
I like this player. I mentioned him. I actually reminded me the other day of a post-mortem pod that we did. And, we kind of had to name a few players who we were like, I'm going to be on them because I believe in them. And I think they're a great pick. Now, I picked 3.
I definitely know who it is.
One has not come out well. So, Wan-Bissaka, we'll forget about that one. That never happened. I think he's just had a price drop, actually. So, forget that. Erase that. Editing, if you can sort that out. The other one was Cucurella, which was correct. And I was just an idiot not bringing him in, who still looks fantastic. The other one's Ismail Assar, and
why didn't you let me guess? I told you I knew that. I was going to tell. That's what I was going to say.
Did you? Sorry. So Danny correctly guessed, but there you go. You knew it anyway. I knew instantly that you'd know. So I was watching him closely the other day, and my only reservation about them was simply whether they were going to have the level of creativity. And of course, they've had great games that don't really give a great deal of clues away for that at the moment, but his positioning, his movement, and his body language suggests someone that's willing to take a little bit more on his shoulders. I still think he's not the best finisher in the world, but you can't have everything for 6.5, right? But I think he's a terrific option at this point in time. It's a good kind of fixture for him in some ways this week, but of course it's more of a kind of long-term situation, and also gives you a really nice option if you are. There's certain weeks that you're relatively likely to free hit or play a chip as well. And so if you did 6, for example, it's a nice one with Crystal Palace. It did actually make me think a little bit more about Mateta, but I'm a little bit less keen on that for various reasons that we'll come into later on. But he's definitely someone I'm considering strongly. The other person I'm considering strongly is Semenyo. I'm a little less. You can talk to me about Cunha in a minute, because you're going to know this and you're going to see this. And you'll be telling me about not planning for future weeks a little bit more and that sort of thing. So I've only really thought hard about 2 people, which is Semenyo and Sarr, because I get the same sort of impression for both players, basically. Semenyo is a little bit more exciting. He's a little bit more everywhere, isn't he? He's a little bit more all over the front of the pitch type situation. But I'm pretty happy with the idea of with Sarr if I do go that route. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any. He's. I mean, when we get to my team, there's one of 2 people I will buy now this week, most likely, and he's one of them.
Yep.
So I completely agree. And again, but that depends a little bit on chip strategy, because I think if you just want to,
true.
I think if you just want to play through, he's a really good pick. That's the sort of example in terms of like versus a Wirtz, where that was what kind of saying that if you remove this kind of loss aversion thing of God, what if he bangs, and he's got those great fixtures. Yes, I know he has, but it's not about who you don't own; it's about who you do own. So if you get in, like you say, I mean, Sarr looks pretty talismanic to me at the moment in terms of his role.
Yeah.
And he's obviously got Sunderland at home the week after next, and then West Ham or something like that. So he's got
what a fixture.
Yeah. I mean, you just said about pace. Then behind it's even so it does actually. I mean, if that is relevant to that fixture, isn't it?
Well, not only that, Danny, but it's worth just. Okay, so I know that his position is moving a little bit. I noticed he was popping up on the left a little bit more as well. It's just basically across the front line a little bit more, but in an obviously aggressive way. He also looks a bit more likely to get assists as well. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, but he looks like he's more likely to do both kinds of returns. But anyway, we'll come to that. But also when he does play up against West Ham, he's most likely to come up against that corridor between Kilman and Agurd, which looks like the weakest area of the defence, and in an already weak defence, that's all of the chances. A lot of the chances are coming between that sort of area. So that's definitely the bit to target if you are coming up against West Ham. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's just going to say, like, I always do quite like when you see a player what looks like kind of taking a bit more responsibility in the shoulders because he's ready for it, and obviously Eze leaving it changes those dynamics, doesn't it? It changes that where it's on Mateta and Sarr now, and obviously I really like the sound of the fact that you said this new guy is potentially more of a bit of a creative player or one to feed others. But I always quite like that because, again, in terms of your talismanometer, he's gone up a bit, hasn't he? In terms of his minutes, what he's doing, and he seems to be happily taking that responsibility on his shoulders. So it all looks really good. I mean, the obvious concern is the fact that Palace play on Thursday, and so Thursday, Sunday is just always bad. It's basically always bad. I don't know what it is, but these teams that aren't necessarily the top elite teams, there's some kind of there's some kind of switch, isn't there? I mean, eventually you get these, the top players that are in the Champions League all the time that might play a Wednesday and a Saturday, and they're kind of fine with it. I mean, it's not ideal, but you never really see, these teams, you never really see a massive, kind of impact negatively of that. Whereas a lot of these teams that go into Europe, every time it's very consistent, isn't it? That they just don't look as good straight after a game. Now, they do play. It kicks off at 5:00 tomorrow in Norway. In Norway, if I'm not wrong, I might be wrong.
Chat, that's one for you.
From memory, they're playing against a Norwegian team, so it's only like a 2-hour flight from London. They kick off at 5, and they do kick off at 7 p.m. on Sunday, which is quite late. But it is still Thursday to Sunday, which is not ideal, especially when you're coming up against a Villa team who are going to be really pissed off and probably really gunning for it. Although you would also expect them to be a little bit more going for it in terms of an attacking sense, because what they've done so far has not been acceptable from an attacking sense. So that might make the game a bit more open. And I mean, have you seen Sarr's record against Villa? I know everyone's talked about it, so you probably have. But
well, do you know what? This is one of those.
Go on.
Oh no, it's just one of those classic scenarios where I really try, especially early in the week, to just get my head down and ignore anything that people are talking about if I can. Certainly up until putting the slides together for the pod and that sort of thing. So I didn't even know that Sarr was going to be considered as quite an obvious option for a lot of people in my sort of situation. But so not really, no. But I knew that the matchup, because I think he scored a brace there, didn't he, a few years ago?
No, he's got 7 returns in his last 5, or 8 returns in his last 5, something like that. But
okay.
And before anyone's screaming in the thing, that sort of thing, I say that because those returns have come in this Palace team under this Palace manager against Emre. Most of them have come against Emre. So I think because he got like 4 returns, I think last season, against Emre, and so it is the same kind of teams and matchup. And we do know that Villa tend to play with a high line defensively, and we know that Sarr is the guy who runs behind the line. So it it does make sense that I hate using the word matchup, to be honest, because it's not something I like to get bogged down in too much in terms of how I approach the game. But it does look on paper like a good matchup. However, I've just talked about playing what's in front of you, so you're making quite a big bet there if you're thinking that Villa is a good fixture for Sarr. I don't think it ever is a good fixture because Villa's a tough fixture.
No.
But yeah, as you say, it depends on. So that's why I've got, when we get to my team, potentially a bit of a dilemma, but that is the sensible move because it's the long. I think it's the long.
I'm going to throw some. I don't want to ruin our team dilemmas later on, but it's worth remembering for my situation. I need to raise money for the Fullkrug upgrade, so I think that's playing on my mind a fair bit. I can't really do an awful lot unless. So let's just say I sold Wirtz. I can't. If I bought Cunha, for example, I can't actually buy anyone other than Thiago. So it's one of those awkward situations. And
you're probably going to sell Palmer. You're probably going to sell Palmer, aren't you? So, and then you've got more room to get who you want. And then, this episode, do I need to talk to you about Cunha, or do you not want to?
No, go ahead. By all means, do. Yeah, I have my reasons why I may still not do that, but yeah, go ahead. I mean, obviously, he looked fantastic in the last game. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the talisman stuff and talismanic features, and it does just look a little bit to me now. Again, 2 weeks is not much, and we don't need to take too much from that. I mean, in terms of Bruno's performances, it's a bit of a weird one with Bruno because his body language was weird on that against Fulham. I don't really know what's happened. It looked like he was distracted by something off the pitch because it was just weird. Like that when he ran up to that penalty, he never looks like that. He looked like he didn't give a shit. He was annoyed about the referee, I know, but it was really weird. I can't put a finger on it, but I know he's had these Saudi offers and stuff, which I don't believe he's interested in. But I don't know if he's a bit frustrated about his position. Maybe he is. I mean, you would think he probably is. Because again, like I know he's always happy to. He always says he's always happy to just play wherever for the team and be in the middle. And maybe he is, but Bruno's DNA is goals and assists, which is why he's always been a phenomenal FPL pick. That's just what he wants to do. He is exactly what I said about a talismanic player. Different to a Wirtz in that sense, or whoever you want to go, or an Odegaard. Nothing like those sort of guys. That's just what he does. He's the one who makes a difference. He got goals and assists. So maybe he's a bit annoyed in his position. I don't know. I would be. And I don't like the fact that he's there. I wish he wasn't. I don't need to find a way around it. I'm just not. So that bothers me, and it bothers me generally about United. But it does seem to me like there might be a bit of a shift going on in terms of the talisman at the team, because there aren't any of those question marks in terms of Cunha in his position. And for me, in any way, and obviously he could play on the left as the left 10. He could play as the forward. He obviously could do a bit of both. They already talked about it on like the Wire, for example, that if Sesko starts or starts to start, he's not going to play the whole game. So then that would probably be pretty good for Cunha because he then moves up front at the end of the game. But Cunha is another one of those guys who, when you're watching him, you can see that his goal is to be the difference maker. That's just what he is. He's a god of player. He's a different ball game altogether. And we said it last time. The way he played against Arsenal, he was looking down on the Arsenal defence as if they were beneath him, which is an insane kind of thing to try and get your head around in terms of levels of footballer who does that, who can do that. It's outrageous. Against Fulham, he's such a mercurial player because sometimes you do see him quite deep and winning the ball and running with the ball, but then he seems to pick his moments to be in the right spot. I mean, he could have scored 2 or 3 goals against Fulham. He hit the post with his side-footed shot. He's desperate for a goal. He did that absolute touch of the gods to take it down from a 60-yard pass like it was no one's business, and just first-time shot, brilliant save. Could have easily been a goal. He looks desperate for a goal. I mean, that expression on his face there has been like what he's looked like for the last 2 weeks. He's been pretty pissed off that he hasn't been able to get one because he's deserved one. And he's, again, I don't think we can take... United seems to be getting a lot of bad press at the moment. I don't really know why. A lot of it seems to have shaped around or manifested around this Mainu stuff, which is annoying as a fan. We don't want to see Mainu go. Don't really know what's going on there. And it's all... people find a way, to talk about Bruno. Whereas actually I look at it and think, well, we played Arsenal. Yeah, there was some game state because they were winning and whatever, but we still outplayed Arsenal, which is an incredible achievement. We were the better team and we got, what was it, like just under 2 XG. We should have scored in that game. I think we probably should have had a penalty, blah, blah, blah. So, and then Fulham away is a really tough game in the Premier League. And, they weren't better than us. It was a decent game. We probably should have scored more goals. We could have easily won the game. And obviously Bruno missed a penalty. So they're just 2 like really, really difficult games. And how much do you take from that? And then even within that, Cunha has looked pretty magical, even though he's not really, it's not quite bubbled over yet. It looks like it will. So, it's difficult with all that because I talk about talismanic stuff, but it's difficult to say that when someone's not on penalties. But someone has to stand out so much. I mean, Semenyo is another one. He stands out so much, although he misses so many chances. But he's not actually on penalties or free kicks. And Cunha isn't. We've got Bumo on corners on one side, Bruno on corners on the other, and Bruno on penalties. So someone has to be really good to say, that they might be talismanic. I mean, that takes an awful lot, and that's why it's going to take a while, if at all, to catch up on models, for example, who are all going to have Bruno quite a way ahead of Cunha, that's still to some extent modelled on the Bruno that we've seen in terms of longer term data. Of course, it'll take into account, his positional change a little bit, but it won't. It's only been 2 games, so I think there's probably a shift happening that's not necessarily going to be picked up fully by models yet, for example. And that's just speculation. That's just my subjective view. But at the moment, when I'm seeing United, Cunha is the main man. And of course, it's a coin toss. I mean, in terms of that captaincy this week, it could easily be Bruno who just, gets a free kick or gets a penalty, or he will get into the box more against Burnley than he has, because again, we've just played Arsenal and Fulham, so he's bound to not get as much. Against Burnley, I imagine that'll be very different, and he'll have much more license and probably be excellent, and he could even be just the best pick easily. But Cunha is a great pick this week for people who want to go there, and it's where my captaincy will be, fairly comfortably, because again, I don't mind that kind of. I think he'd be relatively low owned, although he's probably been bought by quite a few already. But he's the sort of player you can see he could easily get 2 or 3 goals and hat tricks, and he's desperate. I can easily see that happening. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I can't argue against it. At least, as you say, it's basically a question of that precarious balance between playing what's in front of you and thinking about the situation for the next sort of 3-4 weeks or something like that. But then again, things are breaking apart pretty fast. When some of our teams in here, and I can speak for myself, it's not crisis point, but there is that sort of pre-crisis moment where you look at a number of spots and you think, oh, when am I going to get around to that type of thing? So it is an interesting kind of time. But I think it's a good bet to make, isn't it? This is one of those ones. There are certain bets that you want to take and certain ones that you don't. And this feels like one that's quite a reasonable one to take. Just a quick update on it, by the way, because I am 74 has put in the chat that he does start tonight, Cunha, at Grimsby. I didn't even know that the Man United were playing. So thank you. I'm 1974, a goal tonight and Floodgate Saturday. So that's interesting. So
that's
he'll start.
Yeah, that's quite surprising. Yeah. Starting tonight.
Probably roll his ankle.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that. That's pretty worrying for those of us who've gone early. I mean, not worrying. It is what it is, because again, we'll talk about the options. Because if he gets injured, it's change of plan. It's chip time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, can he handle it on a wet midweek evening in Grimsby? You know what? I've never been. I'm sure it's lovely.
But just to potentially finish talking about Cunha as well, is because of that, how I've seen the sort of change in the talismanic nature of him. I don't view those following fixtures quite so negatively, especially Man City.
No, that's fair.
Like when you versus a Wirtz who isn't necessarily talismanic, and versus a Sarr or a Semenyo who potentially is, but isn't as good a footballer, and
no,
maybe doesn't play for as good a team. So I mean, I'm not saying United necessarily better than those two yet, but potentially will be. You know what I mean? So it just stands out to me. Again, I look at Cunha in, for example, a Man City game, and I say, well, do I think Man United will score in that game? Yeah, I think they will, because Amorim's always done well against City, and I think we're better than people realise. So do I think Man United will score against City? Yeah, I think they probably will. Do I think Cunha would likely to be involved in that? Yeah, I kind of do, to be honest, because again, he's a magician. Like, if he's looking down on the Arsenal defence, and he could have easily scored goals, he could have easily created stuff. It was very difficult to contain. I think it's quite a bit easier to do that against City than it is against Arsenal, because they're just that different sort of team, aren't they? If it was against Arsenal, I'd be like, oh god, that's just how I view it. I'd be like, oh, that's shocking. It's a shocking fixture. I
don't know if you want to talk about you mentioned fixtures. I've just brought up the fabulous game week 3 to 11 slide from our good friend Lego Mane, or Dan. So thank you, Dan, as usual. But yeah, as you say, it is, as you mentioned, United's fixtures are exactly the kind that you're quite right to point out, where if it was a player like Sarr, for example, you just wouldn't bother, would you? That there's enough bad stuff for a couple of weeks to put you off. But if it's someone who is who is just a little bit better all round, let's be honest, and someone who's emerging into that kind of talisman status and starts off with that lovely fixture, it's a little bit more appealing, isn't it? So that seems a little fair. And of course, I think many people probably have forgotten about, because Sunderland game week 7 is one of those ones where you might just, it's not quite soon enough to have considered it. But of course, that is a week where, when you look at some of the other captaincy options people will have, that's another thing. Because Sunderland at home, Liverpool have got Chelsea away. So that's interesting in itself. I know a lot of people by then might look at Gyökeres, to be fair, which is obviously, Arsenal got West Ham at home, who, there's probably a 50-50 chance that there's a new manager in post by them.
I don't know if you know anyone who went on the assistant manager last season when Arsenal were playing West Ham.
I don't know. I would have thought it's someone who's a bit of a misunderstood genius and someone who probably was correct, but it's just simply that events didn't turn out the way that they should have done. Something along those lines. But I don't know. I can't recall. Well, I'm not going to, we don't need to speak about, the wet gel. Am I allowed to swear on here? I can never remember. But
yeah. I always push the button, remember, that says not suitable for kids afterwards, because you always forget.
Oh, do you? The wet gel winker. There you are. He's someone. Yeah, there you are. That's a good sort of 7 p.m.-ish thing to say. He let me down bad last time around. Let's go back to where we were.
I just want to say quickly,
yep.
I'm just looking at the United team. I mean, I guess you need some senior players. What does that say about Cunha? It doesn't say. I mean, there's no point trying to read too much into it, but I don't know. I'm surprised he's starting. We've got a complete B team out, right? We've got. I mean, Sesko's out because he needs to run out, and Mainu's out, which I'm glad. He's got Frederiksen, Heaven, Ugart, Dallo, Maguire, Anana, and a couple of others. So Dorgu's playing, and just Cunha there, and it's kind of, again, that's it's kind of interesting. I'd really hope he gets through it, because again, there's no problem minutes wise. I think that is probably just a combination of, okay, you saying to him, like, I want you to lead the players today because you're our senior guy, and we need somebody to lead this team against. That happens a lot, which is nice. He's also the one who's looked super fit, and he's kind of probably saying, like, and you're super fit, I'm going to play you for 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and then take you off. And maybe it's a bit of Cunha in his ear, like, don't ever rest me, boss. I just want to. And obviously, I'm just creating a load of narratives, and I know that. But it's quite interesting that he's starting tonight and nobody else is. That's.
Well, actually, I was about to say something pretty similar to what you had just touched on there at the end. I wouldn't be surprised if he just wants to say, "Look, I want my first goal, and I want to get into a rhythm here. I want to play, and this is a great. Is it away?
I can't remember.
I mean, I am 1974 suggests starts at Grimsby, so I'm reading into your words there. I am 1974, so you better be on point with your grammar. And your syntax, sorry. There you go. There's a word that you've never heard on an FPL podcast before. Very interested in linguistics, but we can have that conversation on another pod. Good. Okay, so I think that, as you say, it's quite interesting. It could easily be, that he's off on the hour realistically. So we'll keep an eye on that one and check in a bit later on. But no, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. I definitely. It as you say, it does depend in my situation on who's being sacrificed, but I think I'm fairly set with my logic at the moment. But we'll come to it later, and you can rip it apart as usual. This is what people tune in for. We've already dealt with these guys, right? So, I mean, obviously we've got the projected goals and clean sheets up there, thanks courtesy to RobT. But I don't know if you would rather talk around the teams first. Is there any particular order you'd like to take?
Flick it back a second, because I've not looked at the fixture. I've been so absorbed. This is the problem this week, and why I'm probably struggling to articulate anything, is because I'm in this stage where I'm so absorbed in, I don't know, strategy and individual players and how many transfers, and I've just kind of assumed the fixtures in my head rather than really think about them much. Whereas normally I like to actually look at the fixtures when I'm more relaxed. I just look at the fixtures and then usually ends up with a better process. I mean, Chelsea's quite interesting to me because there's that balance between they looked a lot better. You know, I'm worried about João Pedro naturally, etc., and which Chelsea turns up, because actually before that they hadn't really been creating much, and which team goes up, because this is where they're not playing West Ham now. No offense, Rich, I'm afraid, but Fulham are
good team. Yeah,
Fulham are a good team, and they've generally been very good from recent memory against Chelsea and at Stamford Bridge, wasn't it last season on like Boxing Day, where they completely outplayed them, and then was it Fulham who completely battered Chelsea on like Boxing Day or something, and then they lost in the last minute. I think it was 2-1, and they were 1-0 up until the 90th minute or something. Anyway, I just think I just touch wood, because again, I'm definitely worried about João Pedro, and João Pedro is definitely a good pick for that game, because his talisman features have gone right up, because I don't think Cole Palmer will play. But I just think that's quite a tough fixture. So I'm a little bit surprised it's that good for Chelsea on there, and I hope it is a tough fixture, because I see that as low scoring. I don't know. Maybe Fulham are missing player. I wonder if Robinson's back or anyone like that. I've not looked into any of these things. Maybe they're missing a few players.
do you know what? I didn't hear his name, but I'm pretty sure when I watched the highlights the other day that he was playing. But I might be wrong about that one. So actually, this is, again, we rely so heavily on our good friends in the chat. If anyone wants to tell us whether Robinson was actually,
he's pretty significant generally. I mean, because he's just such a good defender. He's such a good fullback, isn't he? In his kind of his whole approach to the game and his attitude. And is he captain? I don't know. Anyway, so I hope that's as tough a game as I think it might be. I mean, I'm starting Anderson this week. Not that I've got like a great bunch to choose from, but I kind of low key quite like it, because again, we have seen Chelsea struggle for creativity prior to last Friday in a lot of games. As you say, that Estevao does seem to change that a bit in terms of the dynamics, and João Pedro and Delap, I don't know, came off the bench and said, okay, that's pretty good news for Fulham if he's ready to start. And I don't know. I guess wait for Neil's team predictions. I don't think he's updated yet. By the way, Neil, if you ever watched it, I know you got a lot to do, but you used to always update on like the Monday and doing like an initial update. He needs to get back to doing that. I hope they get enough traffic on that site, because it's the best site for an overall look at team predictions by a mile.
Yeah, Neil, get on with it, Neil. I mean, no, we like Neil.
You do, but do your initial updates and then come back to it. I mean, so it's good to just get a visualization of just who's fit and who's out and stuff.
And if you want to sponsor us, it's fine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Brentford suddenly are a bit more like what I thought they'd be at the start of the season, which is obviously they've got in terms of versus the first game, Damsgaard and Jordan Henderson is pretty significant. And then obviously they've got Dango, who looked really good. He could be a really good pick, couldn't he?
Yeah, incredible that he smashed the DEFCONs as well. I mean, I was not expecting
that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that, yeah.
Do you know what? There's a little bit of him. He's not the same as Sarr on this at all, but he's another one of those players that, because he doesn't instantly strike you as a first class finisher, right? He doesn't have the Bowen thing. He doesn't have the I mean, it's just stupid to say Son, so, but he doesn't have that kind of that kind of instep finish or anything like that, where you think, oh, this guy is really on it, But he just has superhuman energy. A little bit. I mean, you can see that if they do lose Wissa, they've just not like for like positioning, but they've also brought in a player in Utara that has that same level of just unbelievable Duracell bunny kind of level energy. And he's never going to let you rest. He's always going to press incredibly high. He gets over the pitch. In fact, it's worth remembering. I don't know if anyone remembers the actual goal and then the passage of play on the match of the day highlights before the goal. But I think Utara was in about 5 different positions. So he was, at one point he was breaking out like a box-to-box midfielder. He was playing on one of the wings, a support striker, and then as a striker. So even in those 2 passages of plays, he was occupying about 4 or 5 different roles. And that's the thing with him, like he's incredible. But yeah, I mean, we don't quite know where he's going to play. I think Brentford is the right team for him in that regard. But yeah,
Yeah,
they look.
you know
They
what
look.
was-
They've already. They've recovered from that initial setback in a way that is completely night and day different to West Ham. Unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but this is kind of what I expected Brentford. Again, it's too early to say, but I did think this was how I viewed them. I've got Kelleher and really wanted Kelleher. Kind of for that reason, I thought they'd be pretty plucky and and they'd be good with set pieces, good defense, and he's obviously a good shot stopper, good goalkeeper. Which is annoying because the first game, what was the first game again? But it was actually a good fixture, wasn't it? I think, or was it? I can't remember.
Brentford.
Yeah. Oh no, it was Liverpool away. What? Wait,
Forest away.
who was it? Sorry,
Forest away.
Forest. Yeah. Okay. So it looked okay because we had Forest. We thought it'd be low scoring, but it wasn't. Anyway, so yeah, like I've got Kelleher this weekend. So you'd like to think that's a pretty good fixture for them with Sunderland. I mean, it's our friend Spence watching. We had the first week where I was slating Sunderland, and then they battered West Ham, and it was like, oh, but then still expected them to lose to Burnley, and they did because I still think they're the worst team in the league, but we'll see. But yeah, on Dango again, you love that kind of thing, don't you? Where a player who's just you already was good enough for Bournemouth, like. And whatever reason, maybe it was such a good offer. Was it 40 million quid? Because it's a good price for someone. It's a very good, very good. They got a lot of money for him.
Yeah, it could rise to that. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So you like that. Whatever the reason, he obviously knows that. Maybe he was told, you're not necessarily going to play every game here, which is strange because remember, this is a guy who moved up front last season for a period, didn't he? And for a long time, we thought he was the best player. I mean, numbers wise, he was the best player at Bournemouth for a good 10 weeks in terms of his non-pen XG. And that's an incredible trait. If you've got someone who's just racking up, who has the ability to just rack up non-pen XG, it is the hardest skill in the game. And like you said, his finishing wasn't great, but he's got the hard part down. Nico Jackson style or Darwin Núñez style, where it was, and that's whereas you kind of like it when he moves to a club, and you can see that. Okay, these guys do believe in me. This is where I can be a bit more of a main man. This is where I can show what I can do a little bit and have my position a little bit. He is on the left. He's a bit off the left because Thiago is meant to be that big, big number 9 who holds up the play, who supports the play, that brings each other into play. And that's exactly what he did for that goal. I mean, that goal, Thiago flick on. And it was a brilliant goal by Django, apart from the fact that he missed the first. It was incredible pace and incredible touch. Incredible pace. Frightening pace. Watching that on Match of the Day. So I really like that on paper, actually. And again, this fits into my dilemma this week is like, do I just go for a 1 week punt or do I do the sensible thing? Because 13 points, because like you say, you got the DEFCON. He's going to be, when the fixtures are there, because they've got, obviously, unfortunately, after Sunderland, they've got Chelsea, then Fulham away, then United, then City. Then they've got West Ham and then they've got Liverpool. So they've got a bad set of fixtures. So it's going to be later on in the season. But he could be a great pick, Dango. He could be a great pick. As I say, we'll think about this weekend, because if I did a 1 week punt, just for context,
yeah.
To do a 1 week thing, I would need to know for certain I'm going to wildcard next week, and I don't usually play that way. I'm not sure that I want to be completely committed to a wildcard next week.
Yeah, it does seem pretty unlikely. But no, I agree. It's a good point, actually. I hadn't really thought about for people who are got a very short kind of window coming up. That is quite nice. That, by the way, answers Marv FPL's question later on, so that's very handy. So very professional, if that was intentional. But there you go. No, it's good. Just coming back to where we were. We're kind of going through them in game order here anyway, actually, which is quite handy. Not necessarily, we don't need to do them all. It's actually, I think we should just talk a little bit about Wolves, because a lot of people do own Strand Larsen. Obviously, I can't stand the sight of the man because until he came on last night, Wolves were withering away to a quiet defeat, to be honest with you. But he completely changed the game when he came on, because I've never seen 3 or 4 sort of 6'2" plus men look so small as West Ham's defence in the last few weeks. It is incredible how small they look. As soon as anyone comes up who can remotely head the ball, and he just completely beasted them when he came on. So, what do you think? How worried are you about the rumours? I mean, they would be mental to sell him at this stage, but of course, everyone has a price. Blah blah blah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, before we talk about the player, it is crazy the price thing, isn't it? Because it does seem to be, and I know others have mentioned similar thing. I mean, even I think 11 Fi was sharing what we think anyway in terms of a model perspective and the dent to Wolves as a team if he was to leave. Thank you. Just getting my beer delivered. Sorry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good work, Darcy.
Yeah. Good job. She left the room at that point. What was I saying? Yeah, I mean, like I say, he might be a £60 million player, which, to be honest, I think he is. Again, like people are saying that's too much. I don't think it is. The benchmark for me, I keep coming back to now, is like Elanga 55 or
Kudus, yeah,
or Kudus or Morgan Gibbs-White, who's a very good player, obviously, but that was more than that, So I mean, Strand Larsen, a number 9 is such a hard thing. A really good Premier League proven number 9 is such a hard thing to get. His age, his build, his attitude, his fitness. He's definitely a £60 million player in my mind. But for me, surely that is nowhere near as much as what he's worth to Wolves right now. I mean, because the context applies as well. It's how much he'd be worth to Wolves even if it was 2 weeks ago. But with the deadline on Monday, it is the difference to me really between. I don't think they'll go down with him, but I think that they have a serious chance of going down without him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's too much. You can't let him go. And thankfully, I mean, obviously, the problem is how much does the player want to go? But what we've heard is that he's not pushing for a move because he's been very professional and kind of respectful, and it must be difficult for him because he must be looking at it like this is the window for him. It is a window for him to go to Newcastle, for example, where they need a number 9. And I think he would be the main number 9. I mean, even if like Nico Jackson went there, I don't see why you'd have Strand Larsen on the bench. So it must be a bit difficult for him to see that where if he doesn't go there, he knows that hole at Newcastle, for example, will be filled. Will he have the same opportunity in a year or as good an opportunity in a year?
Yeah.
He's having to balance that with wanting to be professional and sort of dedicated to the club. And he's only just signed for Wolves. You know that he's obviously signed for them in this window. So he's just signed for them in this window for 23 million.
Oh, of course. No, I completely forgotten about that. Yeah, of course. Because what was the situation? Was he on loan with an obligation or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on loan with an obligation. So they actually signed for 23 million, which is an incredible bit of business.
Someone who understands this stuff much better than me, I suppose. The turnaround of profit on that is immense in today's game, right?
Yeah.
With all the new rules and such. So
yeah, but again, it's weird because they need to somehow just hope the board has got the right perspective on it and they're being informed from all perspectives, like data as well and models and whatever that tells them how important this is, and they don't fall victim to any kind of, I don't know, optimism bias about like what it can mean, like, have your cake and eat it. Oh, but can we take the 60 million and still stay up? We can, can't we? We can do that and that and that.
They could just get Wissa. No, I'm very joking. Yeah, it's
you know what I mean? They've got to be. I think it would be insane from their perspective to sell him. And
yeah, it would. Yeah. I hope they do sell him for various reasons. Yeah,
he looks like an incredible player. By the way, he's just getting better. I mean, it's taken me a while to pick up on it because last season, I almost deliberately wanted to shut him out of my mind because it was Cunha that I was interested in, and I wasn't. I was seeing people buy Strand Larsen, and I couldn't help but view it as like, are you thinking you're going to cover Cunha in some way there? Because it's like insane to me. Like, why would anyone own Strand Larsen when you can have Cunha? And I kind of shut it off too much, and I guess to an extent, I needed to see it with him for that reason before I would have bigged it up. But he got 14 goals from 10 XG, and he was brilliant. And again, question marks of like, is he still going to be as good when Cunha's not there to do the kind of creativity? And he's just straight away answered those questions. He looks brilliant against City. He gets so many chances, and there's just something about his focus. Again, I talk about a lot. It's just attitude as a player. Like, who strikes the ball like that? With those 2 goals against West Ham, when he's got all this going on, we already, you know, he is, like most players would be, distracted. Both just buried. Both those chances were buried, and he's just so good, isn't he? In the air, in positions, he's shooting, he rifles them in. Again, all these things build into the value as well. His size, his age, his fitness, his attitude. But what I just think I mean, I'm borderline thinking I would have been very happy with him at United.
And, oh, yeah, totally. No, yeah,
no, but you know, like,
I
even
mean,
like,
arguably, it's preferable. I mean, there's a debate.
Exactly. And so people have been like, Sesko, you know, oh, Sesko is amazing. And I'm sure he's going to be a great player. And they've talked about 80 million, etc. Yeah, but he has done some good stuff, but he hasn't proven it in the Premier League yet, which is a massive, massive step. Strand Larsen's already got the Premier League under his belt, just chilling. Like he looks totally at home. Like in fact, he just looks like he's better than everyone else, you know, in terms of most people who he comes up against. Yeah. So that's worth so much. So much. So I can totally see why Newcastle really want to sign him. And anyway, you know, in terms of the player, and it is quite interesting because obviously I own him, and it's a bit of a disaster for me.
It's a real coin flip, though, isn't it? Because it could be an absolute masterstroke. I'm not saying you lucked into it at all for the second, but
no, because
it could be that he's even better than you imagine he could be. Is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a less likely scenario of the kind of spectrum of potential scenarios. I think it's a safer bet to say he's a better pick at Wolves. Anyway, it's probably slightly safer. It depends, because you would expect, because what the talk is at the moment is that Newcastle want to sign more than one striker, and so maybe they're planning a different system. Maybe they are planning to play Strand Larsen with another one else. But say, for example, they do sign Wirtz and Strand Larsen or something like that. It's a minutes issue. It is a minutes issue. It's not a talisman necessarily anymore. Of course, he could still be great at Newcastle, but I think he's, in terms of, for example, an owner like me now, one of the reasons we got him is because Wolves' fixtures are brilliant for weeks and weeks until like week 9, 10, 11, 12 or whatever it is. So that's fantastic in terms of a talisman. Wolves, great fixtures. They're in a very attacking team with a manager. You know, I do rate the manager, and that's another separate point about Wolves. But he said, you know, he's the sort of manager who's never going to be sort of a defensive approach. So great for him at Wolves. But yeah, you're right. He could be very good at Newcastle. But the issue for me and all owners is this week. It doesn't matter about the following weeks. It's this week where we've not got, because Cole Palmer is out. You know, a lot of people like me don't have anyone adequate on the bench. And it's almost worst possible timing, because what's really interesting about Strand Larsen is the manager's already said as well, he isn't someone who will miss a game because his head's somewhere else or will ask not to play, which is brilliant and interesting and unique. And so it actually would only take the worst possible timing that you can hope for, which is what it's looking like it's brewing towards, for him to miss the game. In other words, he would have to pretty much be signing on Friday night or Saturday, and then he won't play. And if he's not, he'll play, I think, even if it's like, you know, he's looking like he's about to sign, because it looks like he's that type of guy, which is fantastic. I just really, whatever happens, I just need to get this fixture out of him. That's the most important. And it's so frustrating, because it's a great fixture on paper as well. But it does look like it's brewing towards worst possible timing, where we're now on Wednesday night and they're about to make their third bid, or they have made the third bid of 60 million or whatever. And we're getting these different reports, but Wolves are still saying he's not for sale. So I can only hope that they stick to that, because it would be suicide selling him, and that Strand Larsen says, okay, no problem. You know, yeah, you've done a lot for me. I've only just signed, and I'm willing to stay another year. I just have to hope. Otherwise, basically, I'm playing Anderson and Rodon this week, and I'm fucked. But there we are.
Nice. Just doesn't matter now. But I wasn't implying he would be better at Newcastle. But I think it was just. But yeah, no. I suppose what I meant is, you know, our perception of him last season. I agree with you. It's not that it's the same. It reminds me a little bit of often ignoring Wissa last season, because I just got it into my head that I didn't necessarily want Brentford in my team, and Mbeumo is just such an incredible pick and always the guy to go to. I love him and all that rest of it. So you kind of end up overlooking what you regard as being the second guy. And I think anyone bringing in Strand Larsen ahead of this season, I'm not saying for a second would have not rated him as a pick, but it was, I think a lot of people, not you, would maybe have just thought, well, it makes sense. He is the best relatively cheap striker. There is this option of penalties possibly and that sort of thing. So there is a little bit of that, but he does look in that game against City, strangely enough, and the 10 minutes against West Ham, he just looks a different prospect to what I had seen of him last season. I mean, I would be buying him this week if I could, which is really annoying because I have to have a striker this week, I think, realistically. I either do nothing in a way and accept a bit of a scenario like yours where I'm going to have a dodgy bench and, you know, maybe a player missing and that sort of thing, or I just have to bring someone in this week. So I can't really do anything with Strand Larsen, but yeah, good pick. I'm not going to talk much about. Obviously, great to see Everton do well at their new stadium and all the rest of it, but I don't think we're going to talk about them or greatly about Brighton and City. I don't know. I might be wrong. Is there anything you wanted to raise there, or are you happy to press on?
Yeah, not really. Just press on. I think it's looks pretty good for Reinders. I still like him.
Yeah. Nice.
Like
I was
going
to talk a little bit about the Liverpool Arsenal game to just a little bit, because I think people, I suppose, if you don't have a Manchester United player, there is a little bit of a what do I do about captaincy this week. I think some people might be fortunate there, actually, because if Palmer's out, then João Pedro does become a captain option, doesn't he? I suppose for some people you could go down that route, or if you have Chris Wood or something like that. So maybe it is a rare captaincy week for strikers in that situation. But I was going to just talk a little bit about Arsenal, because I feel like we haven't really talked about them at all this season greatly. But is there any world in which you think that was enough to push you towards Gyökeres in the near future, or is it because of those injuries? Is it just another kind of wait and see for the time to come?
Yeah, he's not in my thoughts at all at the moment, rightly or wrongly. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get up their fixtures quickly because I know they're not.
I can bring them up.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah. So Arsenal towards the top there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, they're pretty nasty, aren't they? In the immediate sense, yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of buys you time. I mean, the last game didn't really change, but I didn't think Gyökeres was particularly great.
No,
I didn't see the whole game, and you know, I saw highlights. But you know, he did score a good goal, but it was a bit of a sort of wasn't much defending going on. I mean, he had his head down, he ran forward, he cut inside, he shot, he scored. Okay, you know, and then he got a penalty. So fine. I mean, he's a good pick. I'm still not convinced. I don't know yet how much of the right fit he is in terms of what Arsenal need, or how good he is. And yeah, like you say, is Odegaard injured as well? Wasn't Odegaard? I think Odegaard got an injury as well, but I'm not sure. But then Saka.
Yeah, I don't think he says long term as it as Saka, but yeah, I think so.
I mean, they've still got, you know, Wanyeri, whatever they've got there. They've still got a few picks, and obviously, what's his name, Madueke and stuff. But Saka's a huge loss, both defensively and offensively. And yeah, there's just fixtures there. Those 4 fixtures just mean don't need to worry about it. So I think they were a little bit fortunate, I think, really, Gyökeres owners last week. Palace doesn't look good from a market point of view, does it there?
No, I was surprised it was quite that low, but I suppose it was never going to be much higher than about 1.2 or 3, was it? But yeah, that is a little bit of a dent going against the cool logic of those who do this sort of thing. So yeah, that's I know we're not necessarily going in the right order there, talking about Palace as well, but I mean, I have to talk about this because at the start of the week, I think a lot of people were pretty keen on shipping him. Watkins. I mean, yeah, again, return to these fixtures, but
yeah, well, that's what you need to do, isn't it? It's very frustrating, isn't it? It's very frustrating as a Watkins owner when you've got people like Gyökeres, who I don't think are as good a pick at the moment, or were as good a pick at the start of the season as Watkins. I mean, I think he's generally a better pick at the moment. It's, you know, certainly taking fixtures into account. and the fact that he should be a great pick. So it's very frustrating. And kind of perplexing, like how bad Villa have been. And again, I do expect them. I have faith in the manager. And I do expect them to turn that around, and I do expect the manager to address the fact that they've been shit and they've been crap offensively. And like, what do they do about that? They're going to have to do something about that. And that obviously last season they had Asensio and they had who's the other dude? Obviously they got Buendia. They had Asensio. Wasn't there someone else as well?
Oh, well, they would have had Ramsey as well. Who's gone? Yeah.
They had Rashford though, didn't they? Where they suddenly got a lot of attacking players, and there was a bit of a shift in terms of like what they were doing, and it was just like they were a bit, and they were great to watch. And then they've lost Rashford, they lost Asensio. I don't know about Buendia's fitness, but I guess he's been back and stuff. And then they've had like Tielemans in the 10, and it's just been like it's been crap. I don't know if they've made some kind of conscious focus on defense, and they've been fairly okay in terms of defense. But yeah, they need to. So you hope that the manager's going to acknowledge that, and they're working all week on how to actually be better offensively. But Palace is a difficult fixture. But again, Palace have played on Thursday. It's Sunday night. It's going to be a really interesting game, that. But Watkins is very frustrating, isn't it? Because again, thinking about whatever you're doing, whether you're on wildcard, whether you're on transfers, you're sitting there on Watkins. It's so frustrating when you've got Gyökeres has just got a 12-pointer. You've got Ekitike, who, by the way, he spotted that it's a palindromic name, isn't it? I don't know if there are any other palindromes in the Premier League. Anyway, that's for our linguistics pod, or the other pod that you talked about.
Well, because a lot of FPL podcasters have a sort of second line, don't they? Andy doing his walks, and most people just doing walks. Or I think someone does a film podcast, etc.
So, I was going to mention Alan then, but he's not doing that other pod yet.
The gaming, that's a shame. But we'll have to work out what our second. It should be something, a bit like, what's that kind of BBC Two game show for really weird, nerdy people? Only Connect.
Yeah.
We need to do something like that. Basically, something properly up your own. Properly
up your own ass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
People expect that of us.
Yeah, exactly. Twats. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so you've got Ekitike, who again is going into these two fixtures. You've got Mateta, who looks, he should be on penalties, and again more nailed, even more so. And they've got Sunderland at home the week after next, and then West Ham. You've got Wood, who's just being Wood, and then you've got João Pedro, who's it's like, how fucking annoying is this? And you've got Ollie Watkins, who's got these brilliant fixtures. He's done sod all.
Yeah.
He really needs to do something. But again, like, he is one where it's like, when can you ever sell him? When it's not right. It's not if the minutes are there, it's not going to be right to sell him at any point in the next 4, 5, 6 weeks with those fixtures that you've just shown. So
no.
It's one of those horrible things, isn't it, about FPL, where you have it's going to be painful one way or the other. You keep him and everyone else scores, or you make the switch to someone because he's not been doing the points, and then he starts scoring. But I'm pondering this because, again, like, looking at wildcard drafts in case I do want a wildcard next week or whatever, or soon, that's actually a really, really difficult and interesting point is which strikers do you go for? Because again, Watkins still appeals in the same way because he's got the great fixtures. He's 9 million, so the price point's there. If you ever want to go to Gyökeres, or you want to, you need to make that switch. Obviously, Ekitike kind of hinges on whether Liverpool sign someone else, which it looks like they probably will. Is it? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So how do you wildcard without Watkins with those fixtures? Because he still looks like responsible.
I think you probably do have to hold him on a wildcard, but the worst thing about that fixture run is that they all look quite pleasant, but the worst ones are at the beginning, aren't they? So Palace and Everton are both. You could easily see them getting no goals or 1 goal in each fixture. It's perfectly possible, isn't it? It's one of those awful situations. And Ekitike is a really interesting one because, let's be honest with you, if we're sitting here on the next pod and nothing happened, he suddenly becomes one of the best picks in the game, doesn't he? It would be an awful kind of scenario because he does look really quite Well, to be fair, I don't know. The volume of chances hasn't been like off the scale, but his finishing is obviously pretty good. So it's
And
yeah.
just thinking about Palace, by the way, like I did see a fresh report today that from Fabrizio Romano that Liverpool really are pushing now to get Guehi, which is surprising. And he reported that Guehi is accepted kind of on a personal level, which is contrary to what I thought. I thought he sort of said like, I need to be guaranteed I'm going to play because it's a World Cup year.
Yeah,
So that's interesting from a Liverpool point of view, because they will have to guarantee him, and they should, because he's that good. But that means Konate is not going to play, which is strange.
Madness.
Anyway, my point with that is that if there's truth in that from Fabrizio, Sunday night is very close to the deadline, and so if Guehi doesn't play in that game for Palace, that's a big boost for Watkins as well.
Yeah, interesting point. I hadn't really looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. There is an update on the United score. I don't know if you're interested.
Tell me Cunha scored.
Right, there has been a goal, and
Grimsby.
1-0 Grimsby.
Oh god.
Apparently, there's an oh dear for Onana.
I was about to say. I bet you it's an Onana blunder. I was just about to say that.
You see, he's been linked to West Ham. It was incredible, wasn't it?
Really?
Like, I can't believe they would try and bring in another goalkeeper already. I mean, granted, it hasn't been good so far, has it? But yeah,
he's got a few somewhere, Onana.
I want to talk about just a couple more sort of player situations, because it covers off a few of our questions as well. Because I've had questions about Ndoye from Nottingham Forest and to a lesser extent Spurs attackers. So I don't know if you got any particular takes on whether they're valid buys in the near future, Spurs attackers, or sort of non-Wood Forest attackers, but particularly Ndoye, I think, seems to be the one who's in people's thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, short answer is they've not really been in my thoughts, any of those guys, because again, just talking. I mean, but that doesn't mean that's right, because Ndoye's been very good for Forest. I haven't watched him enough to sort of have a real kind of concrete opinion on him as a player and what his future could be like. So I probably need to look more closely into that, because I can be slow to the pickup on certain players for certain reasons. And when so many players are standing out to me as talismans, when we've already got midfields filled with slightly more expensive players, and we've got Palmer and we've got Saka and we've got Fernandez or Cunha and all these sort of guys, I think it takes an awful lot to then, because then you're looking at Sarr and Semenyo, like we've said, and we just talked about Django and stuff like that. Real people who look like they could be talismans for the team. So it's not really appealed to me, the Spurs guys and Kudus. I might be missing one there, but Kudus doesn't strike me as that. It doesn't really strike me as that guy who's I definitely know what I'm getting. I definitely know the position. I definitely know the minutes. I definitely know like how he kind of is he a difference maker. But I know he's been very good, and he might just surprise me. But he's not been on my radar yet for those reasons. So I'm not really interested in the Spurs attackers for those reasons, and same with Forest. Although, just on that note, just quickly, as you know, you're about to say something, but I do think McAtee is a very interesting signing for Forest as well. He could be he could be very good in the future, and he's very cheap. But yeah, go on.
High five, isn't he? I think. Yeah, no. The thing I was just going to say is that, I mean, I know this is a bit simplistic, but if you can try and picture your thoughts, regardless of European fixtures, of what competition Sarr faces for his role, do the same for Semenyo, and then do the same for someone like Ndoye. Now, Ndoye, in a team where they've just signed everyone. Now, I know he's a winger. It's not the same as McAtee and all the rest of it, but the situation there, I don't know. It would be very hard to imagine that they don't do a lot of subs in that kind of 60 to 70 minute range. I just see them as one of those teams that are likely to have a player like Ndoye sometimes that would just come off. And, this weekend they're probably going to be 4-0 up after sort of 65 minutes. So they'll probably be able to give them a rest. And, you'd have only got 2 returns, which is probably not great. So we should talk a bit about, I mean, do you think Chris Wood is a captaincy option for people this week? I'm curious to see what you were going to say.
I don't view Chris Wood as ever being a captaincy option, despite being one of his biggest fans, and despite massively regretting not owning him, because I just think he's one of those players that is kind of an enigma, and you just kind of leave him there. It doesn't really make perfect sense because it doesn't really fit with the underlying numbers, but he just kind of he kind of surprises us every week because he is this incredible marksman. Having said that, he's nailed and he is on penalties. People are saying, like, do you think Douglas Luiz will take them all? Blah, blah. No is the answer. It definitely won't. Wood will take them when he's on the pitch, and he practices penalties every day, and he laces them, and he absolutely laces them. Like if Wood is written on Jordan Pickford's bottle, it's just going to say he's going to leather it with his laces, and actually he's probably just stand in the middle because it's going to go somewhere high and hard. But they're very hard to save, those sort of penalties. But anyway, he's definitely going to take penalties. So he does have those aspects to his game, but even his minutes, you don't know. They've got Jesus, they've got all these guys now, and Doy and all the various attackers. Also the issues with the manager and stuff like that. But regardless of all that, and do you know what I mean? He's the sort of player you absolutely love to just leave there for 7.5 or now 7.7 or something. You love to leave him there because you know he's going to surprise you. You know he's going to get those one chance and then get 9 points from it. But it isn't the underlying and the predictability isn't there for me to captain him. Never mind the fact that he's a striker, and it takes a lot for me to captain strikers because they don't get as many points.
No, that's fair. I think actually I haven't really taken the opportunity to have a little bit of a word on West Ham generally. No, I don't think I need to because it's quite obvious that they're in a little bit of a little bit. They're in free fall at the moment. Obviously, 11 goals conceded in 3 games if you include the cup result and that sort of thing. But I think the crucial takeaway, just from an FPL point of view, is that 2 things. I think number one is the change of goalkeeper didn't make a great deal of difference for one thing in that game. Mavropanos, strangely enough, probably looked like the best defender simply because he's actually the only central defender that was willing to put his body on the line, which actually is something that there's such a lack of leadership in that team. It's incredible. The only leader in the team is Fullkrug. And of course, he's probably the most expendable because, they can't supply chances for him at the moment, that sort of thing. But I was going to come to that. One of the reasons why this week, at the beginning of the week, I thought, okay, after I've had a chance to cool down, do I think Fullkrug might still start, and that sort of thing? And I thought, probably. And with this cup game and Paqueta scoring a header, looking a little bit more mobile, there were passages in the game they looked just a little bit brighter. I know it's Wolves and it's cup game, but I'm sufficiently concerned that I could easily see now either minutes significantly dropping off or just him not starting with Fullkrug again. So that worries me enough. So if you do have him, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a 50-50, unfortunately. I can easily see this game. Maybe not so much the 2 home games coming up, but I think this might be a worry because is Fullkrug going to do any damage against Milenkovic and Murillo? Because he's one of those strange players for Fullkrug. He looks like he's going to be a beast, quite strong. But actually, he's good with his feet. He's surprisingly easy to knock off the ball. I don't think he's necessarily the right matchup. So I could easily see Paquetá playing as a false 9 again, as they did last night. So I'd be worried about that, unfortunately. And defence is still, unfortunately, there for taking. I think they've probably got someone in to play defensive midfield. I mean, imagine playing defensive midfield for West Ham at the moment. Christ. Because someone I feel so sorry, particularly for a player like Ward-Prowse. He's sort of Premier League, not royalty, because that's a ridiculous thing to say, but he's earned his stripes, right? He's that kind of guy. But the man just can't run anymore, and it doesn't matter what you can do. You can have an incredible free kick technique and good passing, whatever. But now he's just a man who can't run and can't pass it back and can pass largely backwards. And it's he's not the only one, but. Yeah, it's difficult to see. I think, unfortunately, Danny, I know that we've had conversations about Potter before, but I can't see it lasting. Unfortunately, it's not looking good. It's just that the matchup. He strikes me as a kind of guy who, with a stable situation at a club and the right kind of support and time, I just don't think he's going to get it.
Yeah, and the right kind of players and stuff, like we said before. I mean, going from Moyes to Potter, going from a Moyes that had embedded himself in the team for 4 years, from a through and through Moyes team to a Potter is insane transition, to be honest. It's the sort of thing, I always use Brentford as an example, don't we? But it's the sort of thing you would never see Brentford do in a million years, because they know that was a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
I just had a text from my dad saying, United getting battered by Grimsby, ... And then a follow-up text saying, oh, it's now 2-0. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're getting battered by Grimsby, and I'm going into the weekend with at least double Man United attack. Fantastic. This feels like deja vu.
There you go. Well, yeah, the logic was there. That's the most important thing. It's all about the process.
Exactly.
I don't think there's probably an awful... There's a couple of 50-50s that we might want to talk about, but I think they're going to come up in our teams, Danny. I don't know if you want to do that now.
Yeah, well, we came onto this pod. We were saying today that we've scrambled.
Oh, shit, yeah, it's almost
nothing
2
to
hours.
talk about. We were saying it's definitely going to be a really short pod this time. We're going to do like 1 hour and just test it out, and it'll be really interesting. Like, maybe people will prefer a 1 hour pod, and maybe we'll get good feedback, and maybe we'll get more likes and subscriptions and stuff. Let it be really interesting to experiment. We've got nothing to say anyway. We've got nothing to talk about. I've got no idea what I'm doing. My head's scrambled, and you. I don't know how you were feeling, but you were saying it was going to be short, and then here we are, 1 hour 55, and we haven't even got to teams yet. So yeah, like, subscribe, and share, and please tell us, and tell us to make a shorter pod if that's what you want to see. We haven't done a smash the buttons really, have we? I know we talked about our 500
smash them buttons.
We need to be getting to, we need some serious likes and subscribe targets. Anyway.
Yeah, well, here's to 600 subs and all that. I think your team's up first, Danny. I think one of the debates is Anderson against Rodon, because I have that sort of decision as well. I can't say I've really given it any thought, but at the moment I've just left the home guy in there. But yeah, all looks good. As you can see then, so an early move has been made, and he's got the captaincy. So actually we should read it out. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, okay. So Kelleher in net at the moment, Murillo, Anderson, and Porro in defence, Palmer, Salah, Cunha, Reinders, Fernandez, and Strand, Larson, and Watkins up front, with Rodon, Gooey, and Electric Steve on the bench, and obviously Dubstep. So yeah, I mean, I've made a move already, which isn't, in hindsight, it's a suboptimal move. It's not great. It's possibly a mistake, although I think it doesn't, that will be dictated by the outcome. Given that Strand Larson, I can't really remember. It was one of those the other night where you knew a price change was happening, and you feel like it's worth at this stage trying to sort of focus all your energy into one decision early and making that move for a price point, which I don't mind doing at the start of the season, as we've talked about the reasons why, in terms of not really wanting to lose value. One of the few things that can kind of control at the moment is a little bit of control over the team value before a wildcard and stuff. Wirtz would have been fine to hold, and obviously, just sell Palmer, and then you can potentially sort out the Strand Larson issue. Or I didn't really want to go down the route of the 8 attackers. Obviously, I looked at that. It was one of the first things I looked at was, Palmer down to someone, and then, Gooey to whoever, João Pedro or something, or a striker, to cover Strand Larson, etc. But I didn't really like that from either a short-term perspective, because obviously, in terms of very short-term, because you've not necessarily got the players you really want in those positions, and then you still got Wirtz this week, or a long-term perspective. I didn't like it at all, really, because you're taking a lot of money out and putting it into that third attacker and having less room to manoeuvre and get maybe defenders that I want and goalkeeper upgrades that I might want in the future if I was wildcarding later. So I ruled out that 8th attacker option, even though it looks quite nice on paper fairly early on. But the problem with that not doing one of those things is the squad and is Strand Larson, and so if Strand Larson plays, it's okay, it's fine, because I'll probably sell Palmer. I've got another free transfer, and the team's still pretty good, and it's kind of pretty good next week still. Where do I start with this? Because I've got just so many options. So having said all that, if I sell Palmer, so I mean, my options are I probably go to someone like Sarr because it gives me a few more options on the table in terms of next week. It doesn't commit me to a wild card or anything like that. Like if I've got Sarr, next week looks pretty good in terms of the team because I will have lots of money. I'll probably get Munoz or something for Rodon or Steve next week. And then you've got Munoz and Sarr at home to Sunderland. You've got Murillo then on the bench while he plays Arsenal for Munoz. And you've got Anderson with a good fixture at home and Porro still with a good fixture. So your defence looks good. You've got double Palace and you've got Reinders, who's just good, and Salah, who's just good, and Strand Larsen and Watkins, who on paper are just good, and especially Strand Larsen, as we said, should be better next week because he'll either be at Wolves or he'll be at Newcastle. And I think at this stage, either way, he'll play because of some of the things that we've said. So they look fine next week. And, you know, what I don't have is, I only have one Liverpool player there against, is it Burnley first? Burnley away, I think, first? Yeah, Burnley away.
In Everton, yeah.
In Everton. Which is not great, but again, I look at it and think, well, I've got Fernandes and Cunha against City, and I'm fine with that still because they're two really, again, talismanic players, and I expect us to do quite well at City. You know, I know our B team's getting hammered by Grimsby right now, but here's what it is.
Yeah,
I don't really mind that. Again, you're talking about, especially with Cunha, a magical player playing as a number 10 for Man United in a derby. I don't mind that too much. So the team kind of looks good. It's still got its weaknesses. And I could potentially wildcard next week because I don't excuse me. It's a weird one with wildcard, isn't it? Because there's never really a right time. It's and how much of an impact does it really have? I mean, the number of times I've wildcarded and you just have a terrible first week anyway, or at least a first week, or actually your team doesn't even do all that well anyway. And I mean, even think back to last season, my wildcard didn't really change all that much. I mean, I wildcarded still into Haaland, as a lot of us did in game week 6 or whenever it was, game week 8. It was actually my transfers last season after the wildcard where I swapped Haaland to Salah, for example. You know, I think like Cunha, for example, or someone like that Cunha was on the wildcard and that did work well. You know, that sort of thing. So it's talking about a few players that, you know, one or two players that often make the difference. So again now we've got with the ability to save up transfers very easily, which is, you know, once you get to 4 or 5 transfers, it's effectively another wild card. And we've got free hits and all this sort of stuff. So obviously, I would only wildcard if I feel relatively comfortable about what the future team, what I think is the best team moving forward, and especially the price points and stuff like that. It's weird because I wouldn't actually change all that much. So I may well not wildcard because I wouldn't actually change all that much, I don't think. There would still be question marks over the forwards. Although they will have been answered to some extent in terms of Ekitike, for example, and Liverpool and who they've signed, or Isak and so on. But I'll still have, Watkins and Strand Larsen will still have brilliant fixtures. So it's not easy to. Feels a bit random there choosing. Do you get João Pedro? Do you get Wood and something like that? And I don't think I would get João Pedro because I'm not too keen on him in game week 4 because it's after the international break. But I don't know if you want to discuss that when it comes to your team. But so I wouldn't change an awful lot. It just changes the base a little bit. I mean, interestingly, what it does do is I would probably get Palmer back on a wild card for Brentford when most people won't have him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
If I was wildcarding, Palmer would be back, and that's because once you come off Palmer, you're really not going to get there again probably until you wildcard. I mean, you could just maybe that's what you're thinking. Maybe you're just thinking.
I have a plan.
You'll probably do the swapsies. I think a lot of people might struggle to do the swapsies and get players in next week like Munoz, for example. You know, a Munoz or a Palace defender at home to Sunderland would be more of a priority than getting Palmer back in if it was just transfers, probably kind of thing next week. But a wildcard allows you to do that, so it just allows you to reset the structure just a little bit. And I think it's the sort of thing where I'd sell Fernandes probably over Cunha, depending on what happens, and then have more money in defence. And I won't talk about what that wildcard might look like on this one. Maybe we'll do that in the next pod. But obviously, yeah, that dictates a little bit about what I do, because either way here, I'm just going to have to swallow the Strand Larsen thing because I don't think Palmer will play, so I'm just going to have to sell Palmer. And as we said, Sarr just gives it's not as great on paper in the short term. It depends how you view that Villa game. If they weren't playing Thursday to Sunday, I'd feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, the fact that it's Thursday to Sunday and you're potentially weighing it all on this. If you do end up wildcarding next week, it feels a bit like, that's not great, because that's when it's one of these examples where it would on paper it could really help to know when you're going to wildcard. So, for example, if I was going to wildcard next week, you can look at that 1 week. I mean, I could get Boomo. I could get Boomo and have triple United attack against Burnley at home.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And people won't like that, but I don't.
No,
I
no,
don't.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't care whether people like that, because is Boomo? Forget whether you own Cunha or Fernandes. Is Boomo a good pick at home to Burnley? Yeah, he's a brilliant pick. You know, and I don't. Yes, it's a big bet in terms of what United can do. That's fine, but it's still great on paper, and it's a logical bet, and it's a logical thing to just kind of like go for it there, a wild card out of it. Or, as we said, it could be someone like Django or whoever else that you can tell me in a minute in terms of short-term bets. And then Sarr is more sensible for sure, but he's playing Villa away on a Thursday to Sunday. So objectively, although his matchup's been great against them and he's a great pick, objectively it's not good this week. It's not great at all, especially when you're selling someone like Cole Palmer for it just to get an 11 out. But it does give me more options next week. It's very logical, because then you're going into next week with a great player and more room to maneuver. So go on, you want to say
bit of a Gibbs White punt, maybe?
Absolutely not.
No. Okay. Well, worth a try. All right, on to my lot. I'll read them out for those on.
All right. You didn't give me any thoughts. You didn't give me any thoughts on what you think.
Well, I was just thinking we're rocking 2 hours 5, and you probably heard enough.
No, you were.
Me.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, personally, this is the difficulty. I'm trying not to kind of project my thoughts onto you, but I can't say I've really strongly considered wildcard scenarios yet at all. You know, it doesn't really entered my thoughts in any serious way. So perhaps that's why there's a little bit of a marked difference. I think you're in. I mean, certainly, if I was in your situation, the only thing I would be doing is whether is how strongly you feel about that Palmer situation. Because I think when we come to my moves in a minute, we'll talk through Palmer in the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks, and it depends on whether you mind this, but I think there is another entry point to come back in if you don't wildcard that's quite pleasing on the eye as well. So I think it's possible to do that. But I'm going Rodon above Anderson at the moment, but I can't apply a great deal of logic. I mean, the Newcastle that we watched the other night, I don't know what one will necessarily be there at the weekend, but I mean, of course, they are more likely to score than not. But yeah, I don't really have anything great to say there, but I'm going to probably go with Rodon and hope that I'm right about that one. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely agree with you on the sort of 8th attacker thing. I wouldn't be tempted particularly to go down and to up that spot. I mean, he's starting to get minutes now as well. He got some minutes and a goal in the cup, didn't he? So that's something. I don't think playing Rodon is the worst thing in your situation anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, you tend to think it's likely that he'll be needed, won't he?
Yeah. It's one of those where it's
DEFCON guy.
It's never quite as bad as you think. But yeah, I suppose also, I mean, Newcastle, they don't have Gordon. They don't have. I'm presuming they've got injuries to both. I mean, Tonali, I think, was concussed, and Joe Linton. I mean, there's no bigger loss for Newcastle than Joe Linton.
Yeah,
that's just the biggest loss that they can possibly have.
Oh, of course, Big Billy Asula is actually not that bad, to be fair. So I could see him doing a job at the weekend.
Yeah, go on, your team then.
Cool. Yes.
Read it out for the podcast.
All right. Thank you very much. I will. Sanchez in goal. Mad Bob Sanchez. Home to Fulham. Porro, Rodon, Murillo, who I have some thoughts about in a minute. We'll come to him. He's kind of the only DEFCON guy who hasn't got any DEFCONs, isn't he? It's quite a frustrating time. Palmer, Wirtz, Salah, Reinders, and Bruno, who's sort of captain by default, if I'm honest. Fullkrug, who I'm 50-50 whether he even starts. Watkins, and then a bench of Dubravka, Anderson, Steve and Gui. So yeah, my situation is a little different. I've already taken a price drop on a couple of players here, so patience is punishing. So Wirtz has dropped, Fullkrug has dropped, so I've already lost a penny on them. Probably losing another one on Palmer if I don't do something before tomorrow night, probably. So it is a tricky situation. I have to upgrade Fullkrug, really. I kind of don't have any choice. Maybe I do, but it's quite a difficult one to talk myself out of. So for me, he's going, and I'll talk to you about who he's going for in a minute. But realistically, it's Palmer versus Wirtz to make room. And it's just a case of waiting for the best quality of updates and seeing where I'm going to go. I assume it's more likely than not to have to be Palmer, but I don't. If he has a chance of playing, I would much rather hold him. And one of the reasons why Sarr is likely to be my midfield replacement is, in my view, I'm quite happy with that pick either way, and he would likely come in for either of those midfielders. And that gives me the option of taking if I want to, then I can go Wirtz straight back to Palmer. So that's why I quite like the flexibility, but you can have your views on that in a minute. And then Fullkrug, I don't know, it probably just is Pedro, but I get what you're saying about game week 4. I hadn't really given it a great deal of thought about his return from South America. I need to look up the dates for that and that sort of thing.
They play on the 10th in South America, and I'm assuming he's been called up. I have not looked at that. I can only.
He will be. He's been playing for them in recent internationals, hasn't he? Yeah.
They play on the 10th at midnight, and then Chelsea play on the 13th. So it doesn't look fantastic, to be honest.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
And they don't need to. It's not like if Palmer's back, it's not like they need to haul him out for that.
No.
I mean, obviously, your point about Palmer, like I say, that's. Yeah, I know. Obviously, I know you know this and stuff. And Anderson's got a good fixture next week. Porro's is okay, but Murillo's playing Arsenal. I mean, you don't. I know that you can get the Defcons and stuff like that, but I'm not sure I can look at Palace at home to Sunderland and not do something there. And you know what I mean?
Okay. So
you're not going to take Wirtz out against Burnley to get Palmer back and have no defence.
Exactly my point. So Palmer wouldn't come back straight away, but the money would be ready for him. Yeah. If I wanted to go down that route. So strangely enough, with Munoz, and actually I was listening to an interesting, I think it was FML FPL was talking about how they really quite like Lacroix at the moment. So we can have that discussion next week. It doesn't really feel relevant now. But yeah, I'm still very keen on Munoz for game week 4. So I would hold Wirtz for the 2 games.
Yeah.
And then if I didn't wildcard, etc., then Palmer can come back in at the earliest opportunity, and the squad would look hopefully quite robust by that stage. So that's my rough planning. I would much rather hold Palmer than Wirtz, but I might just be forced into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. So what striker are you eyeing up? Sorry, to replace Fullkrug with?
Okay, so the two interesting thing here, it's probably number 1 is likely to be Pedro. So I can afford, if I downgrade Wirtz to Sarr, I can afford Pedro or anyone around that kind of money. I can't afford anyone above Kudus level, by the way, in the Wirtz spot. With Palmer, obviously, you can get anyone, but if you are in a situation where you wanted to return Wirtz to Palmer later or have the option on it, then of course you'd still go relatively cheap. The other player I do like at the moment is Semenyo, so that's the other thing. So yeah, that's probably where I'm. The striker, yeah, it's a tricky one because I really like Larson if he was available, but obviously I can't do anything about that. Do I go at this stage on someone like a Nikitike or what have you? That's not really me, is it? Realistically, I'm not going to do that. So Pedro does feel like the sort of squishy fit at the moment. The only thing I would say, I think his returns were quite fortunate against West Ham in a way. Obviously, it was good to see him in and amongst there getting headers and that sort of thing. And the first assist for Neto, I think it was actually a really good assist, and I had kind of overlooked that a bit, but I don't think he's easily likely to replicate those goals in this fixture. So there is a little bit of a risk for the next two, but I do think he's obviously a really good pick. There's no doubt about it. And I am way behind the curve on that one. I mean, I don't know how many people own him, but it's probably approaching 60% anyway, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah. There is,
but Mateta is probably another option who we have our reservations about, haven't we? And if I was getting Munoz and Sarr in as well, then there's quite an easy 3-hit-6 scenario. You know, when they're got their hard game against Liverpool and that sort of thing. But
yeah, I was going to say there's Mateta and Sir Christopher. I mean, I do like Mateta, to be honest.
Yeah.
And obviously Sir Christopher, who has 3 incredible fixtures in the next 4 and does have Arsenal, but don't put him past him to do something against Arsenal. I mean, he's one sniff. But yeah, interesting. I feel I'm in a very sticky, unattractive situation this week. It is what it is. That's the end of the day. This game's random, and random things happen, and I could get shitloads of points. We could get absolutely sod all. But I don't know about you, but I'm pretty chilled at the moment. Like, it's so early. Like, I'm just totally chilled.
Yeah.
And it's not, for me, it's not about how many points I've got so far. I don't really care all that much. It's actually just about what it's going to look like moving forward in the future, and what a wild card or the next team or who I want to move towards, even with transfers, what that looks like, whether I'm happy with it. And it is difficult and scary and sticky. It always is at the start of the season, and you don't know if you're going to land on the, make sort of, these decisions are important at this stage, but it is what it is. The season is so long. It's the lesson I've always said to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, it's another one of these silly comments that sounds kind of empty and vacuous, but the season is so fucking long. There are so many twists and turns and opportunities and windows and things that get you points and wildcards and captaincies. I mean, captaincy is just such an insane thing. There is just so much. So yeah, chill. Don't worry at all about the points. Worry about who you've got next week and whether the fixture looks good for them, whether it looks decent, and how can you make a long-term move or a solid move that just contributes to what the next few weeks look like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if any of you out there are already worrying about the season and thinking, "Oh God, have I sort of shanked it already?" Remember that my mother-in-law is beating me in my mini league, and was bragging about it before we went live. So just remember that is how it is. But anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm at, like you say, I'm kind of quite relaxed about it in a way. Perhaps I shouldn't be. Perhaps I'm being too passive, but I feel like my logic in my situation checks out. I have to just wait a little bit. I have to. If anything, the thing I'm most stressed about is the fact that I am losing price. But I don't have much of a choice in some ways.
You are losing price.
Early, but
you are losing price, but you are exercising
restraint
fantastically well, and patience and logic, and
yeah,
as you said before, it's much more exemplary and what's the word? Thingy trait, admirable trait. I'm just looking at some of the comments, by the way, which is I thought we'd just get the chats with any questions, but
I'll just say, I mean, what the hell, 1974? Cheers, chaps. Destination X beckons. I think you'll find that on iPlayer you can just press from the start and you can miss the first 10 minutes and it'll be totally fine. That's not okay. I'm 1974. Not acceptable. Actually, joking aside, you can do as you will. But he actually, Rob Bryden, by the way, lives around here. He actually lives around the corner from where I work. So I found out about that recently. He's a resident down in Teddington, I believe. So actually, God, sorry, I've uncloaked him, but he lives in South West London anyway. Yeah, there were some questions. Let's just run through the questions really quick, and then I was
just going to say some of the comments because I mean,
yeah.
I'm also said love the waffling, which is nice. So we are just fully waffling tonight. Someone else is saying that they hate it because we said nothing for the first 20 minutes. Okay, fair enough. Well, that's I do the timestamps quite quickly, so you can always just use the timestamps that I put on in the night and skip past all that and go straight to teams if you don't want to hear any waffling.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I mean, like, is we don't pretend to be anything other than what we are. We're not really content creators. We're two blokes who happen to be good friends and just fancy having a chat with a beer on a Wednesday evening. And if you enjoy it that's great. And if not, then that's fine. Not a problem. And that's fine.
Yeah. Ben, in contrast, I know you said that was a nice comment from him. Tremendous content. That's nice comment. And then also, apparently, Onana was at fault for the second one by the looks of it in those comments. So that's hilarious if that's the case. Jesus Christ. But yeah, sorry, what were you going to say, Rich?
No, I was just going to raise a few questions before we go and spend time with our loved ones, as we should. Quick one. So FPL Easy, good friend of ours who's been around here from the very beginning. Palmer to Sarr this week and get ahead of his good fixtures incoming and roll the second. That's sort of a question. I mean, we like Sarr. I think so. I'll take this one. We're not sure about this particular fixture, but I mean, as a sort of medium to long-term play, it looks really robust. Trust Palace, regardless of the transfer situation. I do think they're getting someone in. He looks like he's taking more responsibility on his shoulders. So yeah, I think for that price, you're getting a good pick. I mean, he's not going to necessarily keep pace with some of the other great guys this week, Manchester United midfielders, etc. But yeah, solid logic. I'll hand this one to you. Is Haaland a complete fraud and waste of £14 million?
No. Whether he's worth having in your team with Salah or over Salah remains to be seen. But I think he could have easily scored on the weekend on the game just gone as well, couldn't he? So no, basically, I think he's going to have another great season. I think he's going to score a lot of goals.
And just on that, because it's a sort of related question about, because Alex, our good friend Alex, must have both of these. Who would you captain out of Haaland and Bruno? Is it Brighton away, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is quite a tricky one. I don't know. I have to be honest. My gut feeling would. I'm trying to think what Brighton defense is like at the moment, but it's quite hard. If you've got Haaland with a reasonable fixture, it's quite hard to not go with that in my head. But I don't know. What do you think? Is there enough to back on Bruno there?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, actually. Instinct says I would captain Haaland over Bruno, but I would captain Cunha over Haaland.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Now I'm going to hand this one. This is probably much exclusively yours, by the way, for our last question. But our good friend Eno, which three Manchester United on free hit, and am I more on thinking no Bruno? I'm just going to say one thing about this. When the teams came out tonight, I'd be, if anything, the player I'd be most worried about if I owned them was Dorgu, because I wouldn't have expected him to play a fixture like this. And of course, they've got other options. I mean, Dallow's around, right? Who is there anyone else who can play fullback at the moment? I suppose Ahmad can in a game like this, right?
Yeah, it's Ahmad and Dallow. I wouldn't be worried about Dorgu personally. I mean, maybe that's wrong, but I wouldn't be worried about him. I think he's just first choice, and I think what he offers, especially in a game like this, that we're going to need to stretch the pitch and we're going to need to get width, and he's going to be his attacking strengths rather than his defensive strengths that we need. So yeah, it is a bit weird that he played tonight. I think it's just because he's a bit of the beast. It's a bit like Cunha. So I would definitely have Dorgu on a free hit, and I would definitely have Cunha on a free hit. And then the sensible one is Bruno. He's asking if he's crazy to go without Bruno. I mean, no. It's just another player. It's just who do you own? I mean, he has the penalties and the free kicks, and he's historically been a great pick. I mean, he is playing deeper at the moment, so that does open the conversation a bit more. For example, if you wanted to go for Bumo, if you fancied it, that's fine, because we know Bumo is going to be playing up front, and don't forget, it's Brian and Burmo. Let's not forget that, What did this guy get? 265 points last season. I mean, he's been quiet at United. No one's talking about him, but he's a ridiculous footballer. So it's fine. I mean, for me, as I say, I would probably have Dorgu and I would have Cooney because I'd captain him. And it's not silly to go anything else from there. Really?
I'm just trying to think. It's of course a free hit. It's really about what other options are available to you, aren't they? And it seems logical, without sort of returning to our fixtures chart, quite easy to have, say, Milenkovic and Murillo against West Ham. So I suppose what I'm saying is you can the defence a little bit. Johnny Egg said Dorgu's gone off at half time, so actually that should make your life easy. You know, probably I think Dorgu kind of has to be one of your, well, not has to be, but yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think in your situation, and we know you by now, Eric. It'd be really hard not to have Mbuemo, I think, in a free hit scenario. It is an exciting move that you're taking there. Ooh, that is hard. I'd be tempted to have all three mids, to tell you the truth. I think you can easily pad out the back three with others. But that is a big call, to be fair.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess that's probably it from us.
Yeah, we did well on the short one tonight. Fantastic job.
Yeah. What is it? Oh, fuck. I'm sorry. 2 hours 25. That's mental. I actually said before I came in here, I was like, oh, it should be a short one tonight. I'll be in where we can do some stuff, you know. No.
Never learn.
No, I'm going to get away before I am even more unpopular. But yes, have a good evening. I will ponder over some of the things you said, Danny, especially about other strikers. Actually, I haven't really given enough due diligence to any of the other strikers. It's quite an awkward purchase at this point in time, as you know. But yeah, I'll think about that a bit more.
Sweet.
Nice one. All right. Well, have a good week all, and hope you all did better than we did last week.
See you later.
See you later.